take it away.
All right, guys, thanks very much. In a few seconds, it will be 10 p.m. here in Nevada and Utah. And we can make these projections now that the polls have closed in those states. Iowa, a huge win for Senator Barack Obama. This is where it all started for him when he won the Iowa caucuses, 7 electoral votes. Senator McCain made a fight in Iowa, but Senator Obama will carry Iowa. Utah, it's a win for Senator McCain. Those 5 electoral votes in Utah. Utah was never, ever in doubt. It's a very, very red or Republican state, and as a result, Utah will go for Senator McCain. So will Kansas. It's a traditionally Republican state as well. 6 electoral votes. Kansas, with 15% of the vote already counted in that state, that will go for Senator McCain. There are no projections we can make right now in Montana and Nevada. We're going to have to wait till more votes come in, and then we'll be able to make a projection in those states. Here's the current map based on all the projections we've made so far over the past few hours. Senator Obama has 206 electoral votes. Our projection to 89 for Senator McCain. Remember, 270. That's the number. He's getting very, very close to that 270. The blue states are Senator Obama's states. The red states are Senator McCain's states. The yellow states are states that have closed their polls, but we haven't been able to make a projection yet. These other West Coast states, they haven't closed their polls yet. California and the others will be closing their polls at the top of the next hour, 11 p.m. Eastern. But it's getting very, very close for Senator Obama, Anderson, and the climb for Senator McCain, you know, it's hard to see how he gets to that 270.
So when he gets to 270, what do we do?
We report that.
Fair enough.
We leave.
But in terms of governance, I mean, the amount he actually gets makes a big deal, makes a big difference.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's not just about if he's going to win and wants to lead the most effectively he can, he wants to get more than just 270.
Yeah, but just to be clear about this, now with Iowa in and that one more piece of the puzzle in, all he needs now are 2 out of 3 very safe states. Like California is not going for John McCain. Right. That is 55. He's got 206 there now. He's basically got this. But I think the point is he's now looking like he's going to sail well past 300. We don't know where it's going to wind up past 300, but that is a big victory for a Democrat. We did see up on the board 25% of people voting, and that the actual vote count was still very, very close, 50 to 49. John King, looking at his numbers, I think will argue to you a lot has not come in. A lot of New York State has not come in. California clearly hasn't come in. I think the Obama margin of victory is also now going to go up.
He wants to get more than 50% of the popular vote. That hasn't been done by Democrats since '76. So it's important to him to get that. He'll bring in more congressional seats if he can do that, and he wants to do that in order to govern.
Well, but it also depends in part on his moral compass and his political compass. How does he want to govern? Does he want to govern as the leader of a movement, a new democratic movement? Does he want to unite the country? Is he going to attack to the center? Or is he going to attack to the left if he becomes president of the United States? Will he stand up to Pelosi and Reid? There will be a lot of, galloping herd to the left. Where will he stand on this? And this will depend in part on who he brings with him. But it also depends on what's inside him. I'm kind of betting that he will stand against them.
His supporters will say that he is a consensus builder with an eye toward governing. His critics will say he doesn't have a track record of doing that.
Well, I'm a critic, but my sense is that he will try to do, as often as he can, the right thing and govern toward the center if he's elected president. That is my sense of him from listening to him.
He has studied Ronald Reagan immensely. And so this whole notion that will he be more like Clinton or Reagan, he understands how Reagan transformed the country. That's the model that he is going to use as president.
Tara Wall, you want to say?
Let me just say that after Ohio, I just got some inside information from a GOP insider basically saying that this thing is over for McCain. That was the last of
he's probably been watching CNN.
That was yeah. So I think that the writing is on the wall in many ways after Ohio for the McCain campaign and the GOP.
Paul, back to this point that Bill raised. A lot of us are prisoners of our own experience, right? And when the Republican majority took Congress in 1994, they took office in 1995. Newt Gingrich was handed that gavel by the most extreme conservative wing of his party. And so he governed for that conservative wing. Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid were given their majority by moderate Democrats, and they have had power in Congress for 2 years, and they have not gone off on any liberal extreme. This is a sort of a trope that's come out from conservatives all the time. The political physics are such that the Democrats' majority seems to be building on moderate Democrats, not on ultra-left, far-left liberals. I mean, the Udall cousins running in the southwestern United States, Kay Hagan, the new senator now that we've declared from North Carolina, these are centrist Democrats. And so the political physics for this election are very different than 12 years ago when Newt Gingrich took power.
What do you see the role of Republicans in the House and the Senate being? I mean,
well, I think Paul's actually got a pretty good case here. The Democrats, we now know what it takes to elect a Democrat in America if Obama pulls this off tonight. And it's not just a hugely unpopular Republican president, an unpopular party, and an economic meltdown. It takes a Democratic Party that says, hey, you know what, oil drilling may not be such a bad thing. By the way, tax cuts for mainstream Americans, that's a good thing. We've seen a Democratic Party that, by the way, the president's security bill, the FISA bill, we're kind of for that. That's what Barack Obama's done. He's moved to the center.
Although there may be some pushback.
And the one thing I think Roland made a good point about is that Barack Obama's been very careful in this campaign not to scare America. He's been very comforting, reassuring, moving toward the middle, the Biden choice as well. That seems to be how he governs. If he does that, Republicans, I think, are going to meet him in the middle.
It will be interesting to see how he governs, given that he's had a virtually liberal voting record. He ran liberally during the primaries and had to move to the center during the national election against McCain. So I think it is going to be interesting to see if we're going to see the more liberal senator, now what could be the more liberal president, Obama, or a centrist President Obama, and how he'll even have to work with Democrats in the Senate. I mean, Nancy Pelosi is not a fan of extending the Bush tax cuts, whereas Barack Obama has said that he is. So I think there'll be a little bit more pushback than we might anticipate.
I'm a little bit shocked about the entire conversation. Republicans are on target to lose somewhere between 12 and 14 Senate seats in a 2-year period, and somewhere around 50 to 55 House seats. It looks like it to come in about 25. If I was a Republican right now, I think I would be like, as opposed to trying to tell Barack Obama how to govern, I would be looking inward myself. And the Republican Party is getting a drubbing tonight, the likes of which we've never seen. This is a 2-year cycle in which this party has been hammered. And I think Obama and the Democrats are going to be in charge.
You don't think the Democrats are moving toward the middle?
Well, I think Democrats are moving toward leadership. I think that, sure, I don't think we're an ideologically rigid party like the Republican Party. I think
you could make the same argument about the Republican Party that over the last 6 years, certainly in terms of economic issues, they have, I mean, the amount of spending, the amount of blowing deficit. You talk about fiscal, fiscal responsibility, restraint has not been the hallmark of this administration.
We broke our brand. Yeah. That was the thing Republicans were not supposed to do, and we, I think, created the impression, and rightly so, that what we went to Washington to change, we instead became. And in doing that, we represented nothing. You know, if America wants spending, it's got Democrats to do that. We're supposed to be the other guys. So, yes, we hollowed it out. But now it's interesting, now that both parties are, again, talking fiscal responsibility. So, again, I think it's a very centrist agenda.
I don't know how to bring this up, but when there was a Democratic president, it was the most fiscally responsible time. There was a $5 trillion budget surplus when Bill Clinton left office. There was a Republican. But I want to go back to tonight, because the interesting thing here is we still have a lot to do in the Senate. The Minnesota Senate is going to be critical. If Al Franken wins that, the Democrats are on schedule to pick up 8 seats. Now, whether or not Georgia, it seems to be pretty tough sledding there for Democrats. But if you pick up 8 seats, and you picked up 6 last time, that's 14 in 2 years. That is a significant number. And I don't think we can lose sight of that. Just like, and I think the Democrats are on schedule to pick up somewhere 25 plus or minus 2 House seats. That's on top of 30 in 2006. I think the country is trying to say something here.
But also, the country has also said, though, there's some culpability, as much as, we talk about the administration's failures, there's culpability with Congress and how the nation feels about congressional Democrats. Right. And I think that that was one of the mistakes McCain probably didn't spend enough time talking about, was the failures there and their culpability in the bailout, the financial mess. A lot of it. I think there's
tens of millions of dollars making the case that Speaker Pelosi and Harry Reid combined with a President Obama, well, maybe not enough for you, but they spent plenty. They made the argument. The voters rejected the argument. Right. If you want to keep making it, it's very good for the Democrats. But again, I have been in part of a party that lost. And what you do is you go away and you think hard and you rigorously re-examine.
Well,
Carville and I wrote a book that was very critical of our party. It cost me some friends. Yeah. My expectation is the Republicans will do that. It will be a bloodbath. But my hope as a partisan is that they just continue on pretending that nothing bad has happened.
One point here. If the congressional Democrats are held in such disrepute, why are they going to pick up 7 or 8 Senate seats and 25 House seats? Can somebody just look at the election returns and see what the public is saying?
These are new. I'm talking about the sitting members right now that Americans are not happy with and who have lower favorability ratings than the president.
That says Tim Mahoney's in trouble in Florida, but he had a terrible scandal.
All we need is 9 votes on the Supreme Court, and we could pull this thing off.
Let's go back to Wolf. We have another projection.
And CNN projects that Arkansas will go for John McCain. And at 6 electoral votes, Arkansas widely expected to go for the Republican candidate, and it does. 13% of the precincts in Arkansas have now reported in, 55% for McCain, 43% for Barack Obama. So Arkansas, put that in John McCain's column right now. We're expecting some more projections. They're coming up, some important ones as well. Stay with us. Our coverage will continue right after this. Watching what's going on at Times Square here in New York City. There's a big screen there. CNN are right there. A lot of folks have gathered in Times Square, and they're applauding because they're seeing themselves right now. We're watching what's going on in New York. We're only a few blocks away from where they are. Let's update you right now on what we know. In the popular vote for President of the United States, 34% of all the precincts in the United States have now officially reported. And look at how close it is. Senator Obama with 50%, Senator McCain with 49%. More than 50 million people's votes have already been counted, and just under 1,991,022 vote lead for Senator Obama with 35% of the popular vote in. And as nice as the popular vote is, it's by no means as important as this electoral vote. Right now, the race to 270, that's the number you need to be elected president of the United States. In the states that we've projected Senator Obama winning, he's already at 207. Senator McCain is already at only 95. That's a significant advantage for Senator Obama, and he's won 2 of the most important states that we've projected so far, both Pennsylvania and Ohio. Those are states where Senator McCain fought fiercely for that. Let's go to Soledad O'Brien and Bill Schneider. We'll get some more insight on what is happening on this historic night. Soledad?
Well, Wolf, a moment ago, your panel was talking about the changing face of the electorate, and of course, it's Latino voters that are really making up that change in the changing face. We wanted to dig down and take a look at how Latinos are voting so far. Exit polling information coming in, updated all the time here.
And let's look at, in the United States as a whole, let's look at Latino voters. This line is blue, meaning they gave the edge to Barack Obama, but how much? 67% for Obama, 30% for McCain. What's interesting about that is Bush, 4 years ago, got 40% of the Latino vote. McCain is getting 30% of the Latino vote.
He's lost 10 points there. Let's take a look at 2 states that have large Latino populations. 2 states, by the way, that we have not called yet, Arizona and Florida. Start with Arizona for me, please.
Arizona, that's up here. It has not yet been called. Let's look at Latino voters in Arizona. There they are. A blue category, 61% for Obama, 36% for McCain. That's his home state. He's doing a little better among Latinos in Arizona, but he is not carrying them. Now, Florida you mentioned Florida. Let's go to Florida. We haven't called that. That's still gray. Latino voters in Florida typically vote Republican. They did 4 years ago, but now they're for Obama. Look at this, 57% for Obama, 42% for McCain. A lot of Latinos, not most, but a lot of them in Florida, are Cuban Americans, historically Republican. That's why McCain is doing as well as he is. But 4 years ago, Bush carried the Latino vote in Florida.
Latinos had an interesting debate in that whole, would Latinos vote for African Americans? We had that back and forth, many people weighing in on that. What does your analysis of this data tell you?
It tells me they will, and they have, and they are voting for an African-American candidate. The big problem Latino voters are having right now, the reason Barack Obama is doing very well, 80% of Latino voters disapprove of President Bush. In fact, in the electorate as a whole, 72% of voters disapprove of President Bush. That is like a boulder standing in the road in front of McCain. Because look at this. Among voters who disapprove of President Bush, first of all, in every state, they're obviously voting for Barack Obama. And in the country as a whole, 2/3 of them are voting for Obama. That is 72% of Americans, 2/3 of them for Obama. Bush was the big obstacle to McCain in this election.
President Bush as the boulder, as Bill Schneider says. Wolf, back to you.
Soledad and Bill, thanks very much. I want to go over to John King and Campbell Brown because they're getting more information on what's going on in terms of the balance of power and other issues in this race for not only the White House but to control Congress as well. So, Campbell.
Well, that's right, Wolf. We looked at the map overall a few minutes ago, and clearly it looks like a very uphill climb for John McCain, if not entirely impossible for him to get to that 270 number first before we go to balance of power. Right, John?
Almost impossible, Campbell. And I want to show you a couple of things that I find quite striking. I want to go to the state of Pennsylvania as this fills in. Remember we talked earlier about could Barack Obama win here? That was a big question. He's winning there, but he's winning big. But I want to come down here. This is where races are increasingly won. Presidential politics in the United States, big statewide races, are won in the suburbs. This is Bucks County, just outside of Philadelphia. Barack Obama is winning 57% to 42%. We come down here at Montgomery County. These used to be majority Republican registration counties. Barack Obama is winning 56% to 43%. Down here as well, Delaware County, 59% to 40%. This is a Republican suburb here, Chester County. We're still waiting for the results there. But you cannot be a viable national party if you are getting beat almost 60-40 in the suburbs and then getting beat 60-40 among Latino voters. It's simply, you cannot sustain yourself as a viable national party, and it's not just happening in Pennsylvania. It's happening in other places when you go out, and this is one of the places we are particularly waiting for. St. Louis County, just outside of St. Louis. Missouri's very close right now. We're waiting for this. This is a Republican county, St. Charles County, a big suburban county in here, ex-urban out here, and John McCain is winning by a narrow margin out there, but I hate to sound like a broken drum. We'll go back in time and look again. And George W. Bush had 60% of the vote, just shy of 60% of the vote out there. When you come forward now, John McCain getting 54% of the vote. It might seem like a small number, but the margins in the suburbs increasingly going the Democrats' way. Add in the Latino vote, and that will factor in as we get more results out in the West. And the Republican Party is going to look at these numbers tomorrow and think, how do we rebuild? Because we have a long, long way to go.
Absolutely. We're going to come back and talk balance of power, but I want to go to Wolf right now because we have another projection. Wolf?
CNN projects the state of Texas will go for John McCain. It's a big win, Texas. 34 electoral votes. The state of Texas, with 33% of the actual vote in Texas now counted, 34%. It's just changed, 54% for McCain so far, 45% for Obama. But based on our analysis of the exit polls and the actual numbers coming in, where they're coming in from, these 34 electoral votes in Texas will go for John McCain. I want to go to Dana Bash right now. She's over in Phoenix at the Biltmore Hotel. Dana, it's despite Texas and 34 electoral votes, it's looking exceedingly grim, shall we say, for John McCain right now.
It is absolutely looking exceedingly grim. You're right. And in fact, they know that very well inside the McCain campaign. I just sent a couple of emails to some of McCain's senior advisors asking, do you see at this point any path to victory? And the answers I got were no from these advisors. They know at this point, at least they believe, that there really isn't a path for John McCain to get to the White House at this point, given the reality of those two big battleground states, Pennsylvania and Ohio, going for Barack Obama, and the way the projections are looking for some of these other key states that John McCain has been fighting very hard in, as has Barack Obama. So that is the mood and the feeling and the reality inside the McCain campaign right now. It's looking pretty tough, and I can tell you that John McCain is now here at the Biltmore Hotel along with his running mate Sarah Palin. In fact, they are in the Barry Goldwater suite here watching the returns. Interestingly, the Barry Goldwater suite named for a man who also ran for president from the state of Arizona. So they're sitting and they're waiting and they're watching. And as you can probably see behind me, we have moved out to the lawn here at this resort. This is where John McCain, at some point this evening, is going to come out and address the people who are just starting to come through security and get out onto the lawn and wait for John McCain to come out at some point.
It's interesting, Dana, that the three biggest states in the United States, New York, Texas, and California, that these candidates barely spent any time there except to do some fundraising, because it was obvious to all of them where they were going. It was the fourth largest state, Florida, where they went and spent a lot of time in those states. They basically ignored New York, California, and Texas. All right, Dana, stand by. We're going to be getting back to you. And we can make another projection right now. In Mississippi, the state of Mississippi, and at 6 electoral votes, John McCain will carry this southern state of Mississippi. Almost half of the votes now have been counted in Mississippi. 57% so far for McCain, 43% for Barack Obama. It's a significant advantage in Mississippi. This was widely expected that Mississippi would, in fact, go for John McCain. It has, but it's still, as we've been saying, an enormous uphill struggle for John McCain. If we get the map up and show the tally right now, the electoral votes. So what's on the map right now? We see that John McCain has 135 states that we've projected. He will carry 207, though, for Barack Obama. Those are the blue states. The yellow states, we have not yet been able to make a projection. And these white states, they haven't enclosed those polls. We'll take a quick break. More projections are coming. Stand by for that. CNN.com is where you should also go to get all of the real-time votes as they come in, and a lot of other information as well. We're here at the CNN Election Center. We'll be right back. Candidates basically are now where they're supposed to be. They're getting ready to make some speeches, Anderson. We'll, of course, bring all of that live once Senator Obama, Senator McCain speak. We'll see what's going on. And in about a half an hour, 5 more states with 81 electoral votes will be closing.
And we're told that John McCain is on the scene at the Biltmore Hotel in Arizona, along with Governor Sarah Palin. Barack Obama, we're told, is on the way to a hotel, not to the park yet, so still a lot to develop tonight. But still want to talk to our panel a little bit. We talked a little bit before about what this says about where America is in the face of America. I mean, there is a generational divide here, a generational difference that we've seen throughout this campaign.
I think this is the passing of an old order, and it's still very large, it's still very significant. You know, the white population in this country, after all, and the white participation in this election was about 75%. It was 77% in the last election. Obama appears to have done better among whites overall, but he did not win the white vote overall, according to the the exit polls we have. I think what we see, Anderson, is a new coalition, a new order emerging. Hasn't quite there, but with Barack Obama, for the first time, it's won. It is the Latino vote we just heard about. It is the bigger black vote that came out. Very importantly, it's the youth vote, the 18 to 29-year-old. That group, Rock the Vote, is putting out the word tonight. The youth vote appears to be up significantly. In a place like Virginia, they were 17% of the electorate 4 years ago. This time, they were about 21% of the electorate. They voted very heavily for Obama. Very much. That's that crowd we saw at Manassas last night.
And I mean, the youth vote has made a difference for Barack Obama since the beginning, back in the caucus states.
All the way along. And this is, I mean, it's so interesting because Bill and I, and Jeffrey, I think all go back, George Laurie doesn't, back to the 60s when the youth were rebellious. And there was a youth movement. And this time it's a youth movement but within the system, trying to change the system from within. And it's very powerful, and it's a hugely important part of his coalition.
In the 60s, all I was rebelling against was my bedtime. Come on, man.
You look Jeffrey, as if you're a man of wisdom.
Sorry, David,
It's your gravitas.
Sorry, David, I turn 40 next Friday, so I can't be with you on that. Anderson, here's an interesting about the generational piece. That is, we often talked about age and race and gender in this campaign. When you took somebody who really is the first post-civil rights movement baby to become president, it is vital when you think about it. Jonathan Pontiel calls it Generation Jones. It's sort of in between baby boomers and Generation X. David said it is a passing of the torch because in many ways, the nation says we can now entrust this generation with the leadership of the country. Same thing in 1992 with Bill Clinton. And so it is vital when you look at that and the appeal of it, Obama, because he is 47, he does sit right between those critical generations, baby boomers, Generation X, and being Generation Jones. I think it is important because it appeals to both of them at the same time.
But there's still remnants of the old, because you see the Confederate states, the white voters, white male voters in the Confederate states will, will go 2 to 1.
Wasn't that interesting what Peter Hart said?
Right, this is exactly what Peter Hart said in his poll. And then you have the Union states, you have the North, which white voters will go for Obama. So you still have that divide. But the difference is the movement of the electorate out west, the changing demographics of states like Colorado and the Hispanic vote in Nevada, New Mexico. It's a different country, and the danger, and Bill Bennett will I'm sure want to talk about this, for the Republican Party is becoming the monochromatic party, the party of older voters, and the party of small America.
Because, I remember 8 years ago, 4 years ago, I remember Don King was out for the Republican Party talking about reaching out to African Americans, and you had so many people talking about the Latinos as the,
right.
Well,
but I understand.
Yes, yeah. I don't want to say that to Don King, because he's,
Don, it was a joke.
Well, sometimes we pack a little too much into these analyses. Flannery O'Connor used to say we strain the soup a little too thin sometimes.
Isn't that what cable news is all
let's
about?
wait and see. No, I mean,
no,
all the comments together, I think, are trying to make a conclusion that is so clear about this radical change. I don't know if it is. I don't know if it's that or this economic cataclysm or the incredible ability of this candidate. We'll wait and see. But let's resist the temptation to talk about the Republican Party as just old white Confederate men. It isn't. It's more than that. And indeed, the Republican Party has a lot of work to do. And let's resist talking about blacks and Hispanics as if they're all progressive liberals, because they're not. But there are divides.
The numbers are clear, though.
There are cultural divides in our society. But the reason I was talking about Obama and what he will do as a president is not as a Republican to have some special complaint. Right. He's the president of the whole country. And now the question is, does he talk to all of us, or does he talk to us as groups of factions, as Madison originally said? And that is the task, to bring us together. Lord knows what happens in 2 years. There are people who are hoping that if Obama's president, he blows it, he goes far to the left, and then Republicans get their way back. I hope he keeps us safe. It's still a very dangerous world. I hope he unites the country.
If he does win, isn't the message, didn't he run against, at least ostensibly run against the notion of factions in this country?
I am hoping the better angels of Obama's nature will govern rather than this breaking down of the electorate into these factions.
But this question, will House Republicans be willing to work with him?
Right.
Not on the
With all respect to House Republicans, it doesn't matter, because there are not enough of them to matter. But let's talk about some issues here. I mean, he ran on some issues: ending the war in Iraq, doing something serious about global warming, expanding health care. Yes, those are pretty liberal issues, but those are things he committed to, and I don't really think it's a center-right country. I think those are issues that he ran on, and it looks like he's going to win on.
Will he pull the troops back in 30 days or 60 days or 90 days? I'll bet you he doesn't. I'll bet you he doesn't.
It's a great discussion, and we want to have more. We've got to go to Wolf, though. Wolf?
Anderson, thanks very much. I want to update our viewers on 4 very important Senate races that are going on. As important as the race for the White House is, obviously, that's very important. Control of the Senate and the House of Representatives also important. The Democrats will retain their majority in both, but how big of a majority will they have? Let's go to Georgia first. Right now, the incumbent Republican Senator Saxby Chambliss, he's at 56%, to Jim Martin, the Democratic challenger, at 40%. That's with 75% of the vote in. We haven't projected a winner in Georgia yet. And remember, if one of these candidates does not get over 50%, there has to be a runoff in the state of Georgia on December 2nd. But right now, Chambliss with 56%. Minnesota, that's another race we're watching. Norm Coleman, the incumbent Republican, has 40% so far to Al Franken, the Democratic challenger, the former comedian, with 43%. 13% of the vote has been counted so far. There is a third-party candidate, the independent Dean Barkley, a former senator. Let's go to Mississippi right now. This is the seat that Trent Lott vacated when he gave it up. So far, with 56% of the precincts reporting, Roger Wicker, the incumbent senator, he was named to replace Trent Lott, has 56%. Ronnie Musgrove, the former governor, the challenger, the Democrat, has 44%. We haven't made a projection there yet. In Louisiana, there's a Democratic incumbent, Mary Landrieu. She's seen as the only Democrat this time who was even vulnerable by all of the estimates. Right now, with 62% of the precincts reporting, she has 50%. To John Kennedy, the Republican challenger, 48%. We have not been able to make a projection in Louisiana. We'll go to Campbell and John, because they're looking closely at this very important balance of power in Congress.
And we have more toys to share, I think. Obi-Wan, let's take a look. What better, if it works? Here, John.
All right, Campbell.
What better visual do we have to talk about balance of power than we have our virtual capital, maybe?
We're going to bring the virtual capital in. No. See, you have to trust me.
You have to
trust
snap
me.
your fingers.
Sorry, these come over here. You guys, we're going to try to take a closer look at the balance of power. And as we do so, Campbell looks a little lonely at that table. So let's see what we can do to help her out there. Look at that. That's what we call the Capitol right there.
Very impressive.
And the big fight, of course, as Wolf just outlined, going through those battleground Senate races, is the battle for the Senate. So let's give you a little board up there where you can see the fight for the Senate right now. And what we're going to do here is we're going to take these races here, and we see what's on the board. If it's filled in the middle, that means we have called it. You look at those states up there where you see white in the middle of the tiles. Those are your key races. And Wolf was just talking about one of them. It looks like Georgia incumbent Saxby Chambliss right now is running in the lead. The key question there, can he get over 50%? We'll continue to watch the results there. Otherwise, there is a runoff. That is one of the races the Democrats had hoped Campbell to win if they can get to 60, but we'll keep watching that one. Saxby Chambliss in the lead at the moment. A critical race that we have to wait a while to see. The Alaska Senator Ted Stevens, he is the longest-serving Republican in the United States Senate, convicted just last week of 7 corruption charges. The Democrats believe the Anchorage mayor will win this race, but a long way to go before we're counting the votes in Alaska, so we'll wait on that one. Here is what Wolf was just talking about. Democrat Mary Landrieu is the vulnerable Democrat, the only vulnerable Democratic incumbent. We're watching the vote count in Louisiana. A big factor there. We've talked about the African-American vote coming out for Obama all over the country. The post-Katrina population. This is the first time we're getting a good look at that in a presidential race, and the African-American population down a bit there. This, of course, another race many people are watching. The former Saturday Night Live writer and comedian Al Franken, now a liberal radio host, against Norm Coleman. This a key battleground race. I'm going to come back, leave this race up. If you look right there, you see 54 right now for the Democrats, 36 for the Republicans. You go through these races, and one the Democrats do expect to win is this race out in Colorado. We're waiting for more races there, but I'm going to hypothetically give this one. Remember, hypothetically, give this one to the Democrats and say that gets them up. You see the numbers up there to 55. It's getting hard to get to 60, and that is the key issue. Assume, for the sake of argument, Al Franken holds this out. And again, this is a hypothetical at home, folks. The other party doesn't like it when you start giving these away. But even if you do that one, that's 56. Assume that Alaska race we talked about goes for the Democrats. That would be 57. It's getting very hard now. And if Mary Landrieu holds on, again, another if. We'll do that. That's a plausible way to get you to 58. The question now is, can you get to 60? There's a good race out in Oregon. Gordon Smith is the Republican incumbent. I heard Jeff, I think, talking about him earlier, saying he's essentially saying, I want to work with Barack Obama. We'll see how that one turns out. This is a difficult race for the Democrats. They were hoping former Governor Ronnie Musgrove could pull that one out. It looks like Senator Roger Wicker is holding on at the moment. We'll keep watching that. But the bottom line, Campbell, if you look here, 58, I can get the Democrats there without taking too many leaps of faith. It's hard to get to 60 when you look at these other races on the battle. And one other thing we want to show you, some of you might have noticed, if you're paying very close attention, attention. We have a yellow ring around this Connecticut tile. This is Joe Lieberman. He is not on the ballot. The question is, will Democrats let him stay in their caucus? Because
I was going to say, to be counting Joe Lieberman as part of the 60 seems a little bit ridiculous given some of the things he's been saying about Barack Obama and Sarah Palin over the last few weeks and the way he campaigned for John McCain.
There are many Democrats who, regardless of the number, would like to kick Joe Lieberman out of their caucus. That's what would happen if they did, or if he chose to leave the caucus. Then you would flap. Well, you could watch there. If you watch that number, we could do this. Joe Lieberman stays with the Democrats. Or this, if Joe Lieberman goes with the Republicans. That will be a question I suspect will not be answered tonight, but will be answered between now and January when the new Congress comes in. But this is what we're going to watch throughout the night. And again, pretty easy to get the Democrats up to 57, 58. They would need a wave out in the western states in some races they're not expected to win to get to the 60 number. Still, it looks like, without a doubt, the Democrats will have a bigger majority in the Senate. We also expect, and we haven't focused much about it, but I'll switch and show the House lineup. We also expect a bigger majority in the House. This is the current lineup in the House, 236 for the Democrats, 199. Those races come in a little more slowly because our focus is on the presidential race and on the Senate races, but you can expect a bigger majority in the House and a somewhat bigger majority in the Senate. 60 looks like it might be a tad out of reach at the moment, but we got a lot of votes to count still.
And for those people who have been worried about the possibility of one party controlling Congress and the White House, the last president to do that, of course, was?
That was Bill Clinton. And
Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter. Bill Clinton had Democrats in the House and in the Senate.
Very briefly.
Very briefly. Didn't go so well.
No, it didn't. There was a health care plan in 1992 out of the box, in 93 out of the box. And 1994 is the year Republicans are going to be thinking a lot about 1994 tonight as they look at this map and figure out how do we recover from what looks like is going to be a fairly devastating night for the Republican Party.
And we should say a lot of the races that John showed you, we have not called yet. So these are hypotheticals
right.
as we're trying to get to those numbers, and we'll be updating you as we have more numbers throughout the night. Let's go back to you, Wolf.
All right, thanks, Campbell. Thanks, John, very much. Remember, at the top of the hour, 5 more states will be closing, including California. At stake, 81 more electoral votes. We'll see if we can make projections at the top of the hour. That will be interesting to see what's going on. You can go to CNN.com and do what John King was just doing. Take a look at those Senate races, those House races. If you have some specific interests, you want to see where they stand right now, go there. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back.
And welcome back to this very exciting night. You're seeing a live picture of Grant Park in Chicago. Thousands of people assembled there, awaiting Barack Obama, awaiting the final election results tonight on this night, which looks very good for Barack Obama at this point. As you can see, the crowds are excited. They are watching us at Grant Park there. You can see them reacting to the fact that they're being shown right now. Again, they are awaiting the arrival of Senator Barack Obama. There are a lot of luminaries in the crowd as well. We're joined now via hologram by will.i.am, who is live in Grant Park. Let's see if we can beam him in now. There we go. Will, thanks very much for being with us. How is this night for you?
Oh, this is great. You know, we're at the eve of a brand new day in America, and it feels good being here in Chicago. All this technology, I'm being beamed to you like it's Star Wars and stuff.
Yeah, it looks like basically like exactly like in Star Trek when they would beam people down. That's what it looks like right here.
Yeah, but this is it's a beautiful time here in Chicago. It's a beautiful time in Los Angeles. My mom texted me, telling me how proud she is of me, and you know, lending my career to inspire people to go out and vote and being the voice for young people.
We're doing this interview with you this way because it's a lot quieter than having you in that crowd. It's very hard to hear in this crowd, and we appreciate you being with us. You have been instrumental, really, in this campaign. You produced a video, which you performed in. You got a lot of other people to perform in, Yes We Can, that really got an enormous amount of play. How did you come up with that? How did that happen?
Well, when inspiration calls, you know, you answer it. And I was inspired by Barack Obama's speech in New Hampshire. And what I wanted to do is I wanted teachers to teach that speech in the school. Because I remember growing up reciting Abraham Lincoln's speech and Martin Luther King's speech and John F. Kennedy's speech. And I wanted that speech, the way it hit me, how it inspired me, I wanted kids to recite it in schools. So I turned the speech into a song, and I put a melody to his words and called a lot of my good friends with the help of Pantera Sarah and Mike Jerkovic, who helped direct the video with Jesse Dillon, and we put that video and song together and put it up on the internet, and the rest is history.
There's so much division right now in this country. We're looking at the popular vote right now. It's very even in the popular vote, though Barack Obama is way ahead on the Electoral College map. After tonight, whoever wins, do you think this country can come together?
It's important that this country comes together, and it's important that the eyeballs that have been on this process, that we continue to stay involved in what happens to America. Just because the news doesn't cover it doesn't mean that we don't take responsibility in our own communities and our own schools to push so whoever is the president executes the things that they've promised since they've been campaigning.
Will.i.am, I appreciate you being with us tonight via hologram. Thanks very much. Have a great time tonight.
Thank you. Check it out.
All right. Got a lot more ahead, a lot more holograms ahead, and a lot more importantly, a lot more election results. We'll be right back.
We're only 6 minutes away or so, 7 minutes away, Anderson, from the polls closing on the West Coast in California and 4 other states. 81 electoral votes. Potentially, we could be making some major projections at the top of the hour.
We also have views, images from really around the world where we are watching, people watching this around the world right now. There's a lot of excitement out there.
We have viewers here on CNN and CNN International in 240 countries around the world right now. Take a look. They're watching us in Sydney, Australia. There they are. They're watching what's happening here in the United States. A nice time difference, but they're applauding in Sydney. In Los Angeles, they're watching. They're getting ready to close the polls in California in a few minutes. We'll see if we can make a projection there. In New York, you're looking at this picture here. This is in Harlem, where there's a lot of excitement. Potentially the first African-American to be elected president of the United States. Very excited in Harlem. And look at this. They're even watching. There's a watching party in Kenya right now. Barack Obama's father, as all of our viewers know, he was from Kenya. Barack Obama went there, visited there. So they're rooting for Barack Obama in Kenya as well. All of this part of the international audience that's glued right now to see what happens here in the United States. Let's walk back to Anderson. He's got the best political team on television. They're watching it. They're glued to their TVs as well, Anderson.
We are. It's definitely getting close. I mean, we're now moments away from the 11 o'clock hour. It could be a very significant hour.
This could be, it is a witching hour. We've got California with 55. He's 63 away. California's got 55. He only needs 8 more. You got Washington, Oregon, Hawaii. Wouldn't it be particularly fitting if Hawaii was the state that put him over? His grandmother just died. It was, it's so important to him as a state, so important to his origins. There's something really nice about that.
Bill Bennett, I know you have to take off at 11. Your thoughts at this hour?
Well, it's been a very interesting campaign, hasn't it? Really, really interesting campaign. And if Barack Obama wins the presidency, I will pray for Barack Obama. I will pray for this country. But, John McCain could have taken an easy life, after all he's been through. Could have lived with his wife and, just celebrated the good life, the luxury life. Incredible obstacles he faced this year in this campaign. The electoral vote looks like it will be pretty one-sided. Looks like the popular vote may actually be pretty close. I just remember he said, I would rather lose an election than lose a war. Looks like he's about to lose an election. But thanks in large part to his efforts, looks like we're not going to lose a war. So just a salute to him. All the commentators, all the people commented on tonight, no one in the history of running for president has given more to his country than John McCain.
September 2003, I'm at Congressional Black Caucus, and I'm walking around talking to people. And Anderson, really, this skinny guy with big ears reaches out his hand and says, hey, I'm Barack Obama running for the U.S. Senate. At that time, there were no blacks in the U.S. Senate. And I was kind of like, okay, right. And then all of a sudden, to think 5 years later that this guy clearly is about to give a speech as a president-elect of the United States, the 44th president, is stunning. It's absolutely stunning. The path that he has traveled. And it's amazing how he maintained himself from that period to now. is truly stunning.
He couldn't get into the 2000 convention. He couldn't get on the floor, and he couldn't rent a car in 2000 convention. This happened in George Bush's America. May I just say that as a last comment? Kind of a joke, guys. Sorry.
Can I just say something about John McCain? If John McCain doesn't win tonight, as it looks like he won't, it will be the 5th consecutive presidential election where the candidate with the better war record lost. You know, when you think about military heroes as great politicians, as people, you know, 92, George Bush Sr., 96, Bob Dole, 2000, Al Gore, 2004, John Kerry, and now John McCain. All these war heroes, they get the nomination, but they don't win. Now, I don't know what conclusion to draw, but it is peculiar.
It is that we are no longer right.
It's generational.
It's totally generational.
Sure
and by the way, another thing that stood in John McCain's path was his age. I think when you look at these exit polls, in many ways you can see, as Bill Schneider and Soledad said earlier, that age may have been more of a factor than race in this election. And I think when you have a younger electorate and you have a 72-year-old presidential candidate who chooses somebody that 60% of the people don't think is qualified to be vice president, should anything happen to him, you've got a problem there. But can I say something about John McCain? I've covered him for such a long time. He's an honorable man, and you're right, he could have found other things to do. He came back from the dead in his primary campaign, and he's somebody who fought this out, and it was a tough road, and he did not run a great campaign. Let's be clear about that. You would agree with me on that.
I'm sorry, we're going to have a projection now, Wolf.
And this is a big one. Senator Barack Obama will carry the state of Virginia. This is an important win for Senator Obama. 13 electoral votes, 92% of the precincts in Virginia have now reported, and Senator Obama will carry the state. Right now, take a look at the actual vote. 51% for Obama, 49% for McCain. He's up by 61,820. That's with 92% of the precincts. Virginia. It hasn't gone Republican in what, some 44 years, since 1964. That was the last time Virginia went for a Democratic presidential candidate. It was for LBJ back in 1964. But now Virginia and its electoral votes, we project, will go for Barack Obama. We're only a few seconds away from the top of the hour when these states will be closing, and there are some big ones, especially California, the largest state in the United States with 55 electoral votes. Hawaii, that's where Barack Obama was born. It will be closing its polls. Idaho, Oregon, and Washington states, both of those states have been going Democratic in presidential contests in recent years. So in a few seconds, those states will be closing their polls, and presumably we'll be able to see what's going on and make perhaps a major projection at that point. This is a moment that a lot of people have been waiting for. This is a moment that potentially could be rather historic. And CNN can now project that Barack Obama, 47 years old, will become the president-elect of the United States. We project he now has enough electoral votes, more than 270, more than enough to become the 44th president of the United States. This little-known U.S. senator only a few years ago, seemingly coming out of nowhere, delivering the Democratic Convention keynote address back at the convention in 2004, all of a sudden taking off, becoming a United States Senator from Illinois, and now he will be the first African-American president of the United States. This is a moment so many people have been waiting for, and they're really excited, especially in Chicago. Let's listen in for a moment.
So during all this is only this, you know, if he is the new face of America, they are two. He represents that. So go ahead and take a look at those. I'm not sure you would if you're very much. The voters just not just listening.
There you see the crowds. They are exhilarated right now, some 232 years after the Declaration of Independence. An African-American, a black man, has been elected president of the United States. He will become the president-elect. He will be inaugurated and sworn in on January 20th of next year. The hard work will really begin at this moment, but this is a moment right now that so many millions of people in the United States can celebrate, because Barack Obama will become the 44th president of the United States. Anderson?
Roland Martin, as you watch these pictures, as you think about this moment, your thoughts?
Obama's going to be sworn in on January 20th, 2009. 2009 will mark the 100th anniversary of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Obama got his start in politics in Springfield, Illinois. It was a race riot in Springfield, Illinois that led to the creation of the NAACP.
Bill Bennett?
I think I said everything I want to say. I'll pray for him, pray for the country. Congratulations. It's a great country. It's a great country, and I hope he's a great president.
David?
Yeah, Anderson, I went back to look at the last speech that Martin Luther King gave back in 1968. It was the day before he died, but he was assassinated. And he said, I just want to do God's will. And he's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over, and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. And it seems to me for an awful lot of people in this country, especially for African Americans, and Barack Obama said he's part of the Joshua generation, and Martin Luther King was our Moses, that we're much closer to that now. We haven't ended our prejudice, but there's something about this evening and this election that I think has made for an awful lot of people feel, you know, this is the Joshua generation. We can reach something we never thought we could reach 40, 50 years ago.
Well, I went and looked back at the Constitution, and the first sentence talks of our desire to form a more perfect union. We haven't done that, but we're still striving, and I think only the least gracious among us, no matter what your political philosophy, only the least gracious wouldn't say that this is a watershed moment for America.
Jeff?
You know, last year I was lucky enough to go to Madrid with my family, and I went to the palace where the king always receives the President of the United States. It's one of these amazing European palaces. And I thought, what if Barack Obama is the symbol who walks through? What if he is the representative to the world of the United States? That is going to be such a transformational experience in terms of how the world sees us that I don't know if we can really figure it out, what it means at this point.
You know what, Angela, African-American parents for years, when their children said, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be a politician, I want to be an astronaut, they always said, they could always point to an African-American who's achieved it. But whenever a kid said, I want to be president, I literally saw black parents say, son or daughter, you may think it needs something else. I have 9 nieces and 4 nephews. And when I talk to them, I can actually say that and mean it.
Bingo. That's it.
On the right-hand side of your screen, the images from Kenya, celebration there. We've been showing you images from around the world. Soledad O'Brien also watching the reaction here. Soledad, your thoughts?
When we were doing our documentary, Black in America, it was amazing to have people think about the promise that a Barack Obama election could bring. People didn't even want to speak about it specifically in case it were not to happen. African Americans, of course. There are so many issues in Black America, some of which we looked at, and his election will not solve those issues overnight, but what a symbol it sends, as Jeff said, outside this nation and then inside this nation, the promise of how great America can be to all Americans, all of us. With the election, with the step forward of this one man, I think African Americans see this as such a historic and important moment. It's an incredible night.
Roland Martin, as you look at these pictures, you're an Obama supporter. Do you wish you were there tonight?
No, because I think about Vernon Jarrett. I think about Frederick Douglass. I think about Ida B. Wells Barnett. These were some of the most historic Black journalists. Their job was to chronicle history as it evolved. And to be able to sit here and look at that wall, to be able to watch this whole night transpire, this is what God destined for me to do, to be a journalist. And this is the place where I would want to be because it's history. And to be able to chronicle it, to be able to talk about it, there is nothing that can replace it. And whenever I listen to my, again, peers and mentors, and they talked about when Joe Louis beat Max Mellon, when they talked about Jackie Robinson breaking the Major League color barrier, when they talked about the I Have a Dream speech, they were there. They talked about it from a historical standpoint. In 30 years, I'll be 40 years old next Friday. In 30 years, I can have that very same conversation. So there's no place I would rather be than on this set, on this night.
Tara Wall, as you sit here watching this, want to get the whole back panel's reaction. Your thoughts?
Well, it is a historic day, certainly. Much congratulations to Barack Obama. I think that certainly for African Americans, history has been made. Whether you agree with him ideologically or not, it is significant. And while many blacks are having a very proud moment right now in America, I never thought they would see this. We have to remember as well, he is not just a black president, but the president for all Americans. And whether you're black, white, rich, poor, Republican, Democrat. So we do have to move forward as a country and support this president and see what he does as a president that's going to represent all Americans.
Paul? Yeah, I'm thinking about Barbara Jordan, one of the great leaders of the civil rights movement. 34 years ago as a congresswoman, she said that when the Constitution was written, it began with "we the people," but it left her out. She thought maybe it was by accident. But in truth, that document enslaved her and it insulted her, counting her as 3/5 of a human being. But she concluded in that speech saying, "My faith in the Constitution is whole, it is total, it is complete." And tonight reminds me of what the Scripture said, that faith is the substance of things hoped for. Well, this has been hoped for by a lot of people for a long time, and people have kept faith with the American dream in that Constitution, even when they were left out of it. And this is a wonderful and powerful night for everybody who believes in the Constitution, the American dream. This is a very cynical age. It's kind of a cynical profession that we're in. You cannot look upon these people and look at the history that's made tonight and be a cynic.
James?
Well, I grew up in the segregated South. I didn't go to school with African Americans, although the way I grew up was overwhelmingly, and it's just hard to overestimate the significance of this event. It's not just another presidential election, and I'm just looking at these people's faces, and I don't blame them. I certainly never thought obviously later on I did, but as a child, even as a young man, and even sort of middle age, I never thought I'd see this. This is a remarkable thing for this country, and I think it make it a big statement about us as a people. I really do.
Remarkable night, and I think a great night for the country. When you think of the great American presidents, they've been transformational men, transformational forces. Whether it's FDR or John F. Kennedy or Ronald Reagan, they're people who took America into a new frontier. And whether it's the Depression or the Cold War, or today we see new global challenges, security, certainly a new global economic frontier for America. And it seems that America has once again chosen a transformational leader, someone who would take a country that's a little lost and uncertain into the future. a new frontier election, a new frontier president. I think that's what we're seeing tonight. Godspeed.
I got an email from the daughter of Viola Liuzzo. I hope I'm pronouncing her name correct. People may not remember, this was a white mother from Michigan who drove down south to try to register African Americans. And she was blown away on the highway by some white supremacists. And clearly we have our pictures and we're showcasing and understandable African Americans. There were any number of whites in this country who walked and who marched and who protested as well. There were folks who raised funds, there were people who gave money, there were people who said that they were not going to raise their children the way they raised them. I think about those white Southern justices, those Fifth Circuit Court of Appeal judges who put into place Brown versus Board of Education. They were disowned by their own friends and family members. So this is not just, I think, a moment for African Americans to celebrate. There were any number of people who wanted to see this day come, who truly wanted to say that, yes, to be an American, whether you're black, white, Hispanic, Asian, whatever, we're all in this together. And so I think they also are celebrating as well, because that family, their mother gave their life, a white mother from Michigan, just like African Americans gave their lives for the right to vote as well.
By the way, I should point out we understand we're about 2 minutes away from hearing from Senator John McCain, who will be addressing crowds on the grounds of the Biltmore Hotel in Arizona. We, of course, will bring that to you live.
This nation has such elasticity, flexibility. You know, people you talk to abroad can't believe that the country that elected George W. Bush 8 years ago has shifted and is now electing Barack Obama. And they ask, well, what's this? How can you do what? How can you do that? And it's because we have an amazing ability in this country to learn, to change, and to give opportunity. And I think that's what's going on here. We've already changed a lot, and I think this is going to really make change come a lot faster in this country now. It's going to speed it up.
I want to go back to the youth question, too, as you look out over that crowd. There are an awful lot of young people in that crowd out there we're looking at now. And this millennial generation does represent fresh hope for the country. And one of the reasons is it is more diverse. 40% of this millennial generation is minority. And they have learned to look beyond gender and race, much more than the older generation has. And they hope in a new way. And it's that part of it which I think renews the country as well. It's the fact that people spread up with new ideas, fresh ideas, fresh hope.
Give the other guy a chance.
And much of this election is not just about Barack Obama tonight. It's about those thousands, hundreds of thousands of people.
Look at that crowd. That is a remarkable shot right there.
Who have been, working together on the internet, talking to each other, encouraging each other along, forming a community, forming a movement, that he's the leader of the movement. But they really, this is a bottom-up campaign, and that represents a lot of the hope for the country in the future, because if you get that sea of humanity here tonight, Manassas last night, Orlando we saw a couple nights ago, one city after another, that represents sort of an army for change.
I read an essay, I think it was by George Packer from the New Republic, I think it was online today, saying that in the last several days he's seen a heaviness in Barack Obama, a realization that of what lies ahead, that it's no longer just about winning, it's about actually governing.
And the New Yorker, not the New Republic.
Oh, I'm sorry, the New Yorker, yes. Sorry.
You write for them, right?
Yes.
But I mean, that is something, wher he has been wrestling, it is something he certainly now has to face.
Absolutely, and that generation has to face it too. I remember all that generation. So I was old enough in the '60s. This is the best, the most idealistic. No, they weren't. They talked a good game, but when it came to performance, many didn't measure up. We'll see. It's in the testing, and life is a long run. But the one other American figure, I think, who has to be cited tonight is that other Illinoisan who had that burden.
Reverend Jesse Jackson, by the way, there.
Well, I was thinking of Lincoln, not Jackson.
No, I'm sorry. I'm showing viewers the picture.
Oh, okay.
I was not adding it in.
No.
Yes, but, we have a picture there of Reverend Jackson crying.
But talk about the burdens. Yes. I mean, now comes the job, and I think he knows that.
You know what, as we look at the picture of Reverend Jackson, when we talked about this whole thing during the campaign, was interesting. It was Reverend Jackson's run in 1998 that created the proportional delegation.
We've got John McCain now on stage with Cindy McCain, Sarah Palin, and her husband Todd. Let's listen in.
Thank you for coming here on this beautiful Arizona evening. My friends, we have come to the end of a long journey. The American people have spoken, and they have spoken clearly. A little while ago, I had the honor of calling Senator Barack Obama to congratulate him, please, to congratulate him on being elected the next president of the country that we both love. In a contest as long and difficult as this campaign has been, his success alone commands my respect for his ability and perseverance. But that he managed to do so by inspiring the hopes of so many millions of Americans who had once wrongly believed that they had little at stake or little influence in the election of an American president is something I deeply admire and commend him for achieving. This is an historic election, and I recognize the special significance it has for African Americans and for the special pride that must be theirs tonight. I've always believed that America offers opportunities to all who have the industry and will to seize it. Senator Obama believes that too. But we both recognize that though we have come a long way from the old injustices that once stained our nation's reputation and denied some Americans the full blessings of American citizenship, the memory of them still had the power to wound. A century ago, President Theodore Roosevelt's invitation of Booker T. Washington to dine at the White House was taken as an outrage in many quarters. America today is a world away from the cruel and prideful bigotry of that time. There is no better evidence of this than the election of an African American to the presidency of the United States. Let there be no reason now. Let there be no reason now for any American to fail to cherish their citizenship in this, the greatest nation on earth. Senator Obama has achieved a great thing for himself and for his country. I applaud him for it and offer him my sincere sympathy that his beloved grandmother did not live to see this day. Though our faith assures us she is at rest in the presence of her Creator, and so very proud of the good man she helped raise. Senator Obama and I have had and argued our differences, and he has prevailed. No doubt many of those differences remain. These are difficult times for our country, and I pledge to him tonight to do all in my power to help him lead us through the many challenges we face. I urge all Americans who supported me to join me in not just congratulating him, but offering our next president our goodwill and earnest effort to find ways to come together, to find the necessary compromises to bridge our differences and help restore our prosperity, defend our security in a dangerous world, and leave our children and grandchildren a stronger, better country than we inherited. Whatever our differences, we are fellow Americans. And please believe me when I say, no association has ever meant more to me than that. It is natural. It's natural tonight to feel some disappointment. But tomorrow, We must move beyond it and work together to get our country moving again. We fought as hard as we could. And though we fell short, the failure is mine, not yours. I am so deeply grateful to all of you for the great honor of your support and for all you have done for me. I wish the outcome had been different, my friends. The road was a difficult one from the outset, but your support and friendship never wavered. I cannot adequately express how deeply indebted I am to you. I'm especially grateful to my wife, Cindy, my children, my dear mother, and all my family, and to the many old and dear friends who have stood by my side through the many ups and downs of this long campaign. I have always been a fortunate man, and never more so, for the love and encouragement you have given me. You know, campaigns are often harder on a candidate's family than on the candidate, and that's been true in this campaign. All I can offer in compensation is my love and gratitude and the promise of more peaceful years ahead. I am also, of course, very thankful to Governor Sarah Palin, one of the best campaigners I've ever seen. One of the best campaigners I have ever seen, and an impressive new voice in our party for reform and the principles that have always been our greatest strength. Her husband, Todd, and their 5 beautiful children for their tireless dedication to our cause and the courage and grace they showed in the rough and tumble of a presidential campaign. We can all look forward with great interest to her future service to Alaska, the Republican Party, and our country. To all my campaign comrades, from Rick Davis and Steve Schmidt and Mark Salter, to every last volunteer who fought so hard and valiantly, month after month, in what at times seemed to be the most challenged campaign in modern times. Thank you so much. A lost election will never mean more to me than the privilege of your faith and friendship. I don't know what more we could have done to try to win this election. I'll leave that to others to determine. Every candidate makes mistakes, and I'm sure I made my share of them. But I won't spend a moment of the future regretting what might have been. This campaign was and will remain the great honor of my life. And my heart is filled with nothing but gratitude for the experience, and to the American people for giving me a fair hearing before deciding that Senator Obama and my old friend, Senator Joe Biden, should have the honor of leading us for the next 4 years. Please, please. I would not be an American worthy of the name should I regret a fate that has allowed me the extraordinary privilege of serving this country for half a century. Today, I was a candidate for the highest office in the country I love so much. And tonight, I remain her servant. That is blessing enough for anyone, and I thank the people of Arizona for it. Tonight, more than any night, I hold in my heart nothing but love for this country and for all its citizens. Whether they supported me or Senator Obama, I wish Godspeed to the man who was my former opponent and will be my president. And I call on all Americans, as I have often in this campaign, to not despair of our present difficulties, but to believe always in the promise and greatness of America, because nothing is inevitable here. Americans never quit. We never surrender. We never hide from history. We make history. Thank you, and God bless you, and God bless America. Thank you all very much.
So there he is, a very, very gracious concession speech by Senator McCain. There he is with his wife, Cindy, and the Alaska governor, Sarah Palin, and her husband, Todd. They are in Phoenix, Arizona right now. They certainly had hoped it wouldn't end like this, but it has. Barack Obama will become the 44th president of the United States, and Joe Biden will become the vice president of the United States. The governors of Illinois and of Delaware will now have to get replacements for both. Joe Biden, among other things, was reelected as senator from Delaware tonight, but he'll be replaced in the U.S. Senate by the governor there, and in Illinois there will be a new senator as well. Both Barack Obama and Joe Biden now will get ready for this transition period between now and January 20th, 2009, when they will be sworn in on the Capitol steps of the United States Congress, and they will become the next president and vice president of the United States. Senator Obama is getting ready to speak to a crowd. He's going to come over to Grant Park. There you see these live pictures from Chicago. He was on the phone earlier. He took Senator McCain's concession call. They spoke. We're told it was a very, very gracious conversation. But now this crowd in Chicago, very different than the crowd we just saw in Phoenix, Arizona at the Biltmore Hotel. There are tens of thousands of people, maybe hundreds of thousands, who have gathered in Grant Park in Chicago to hear from Barack Obama. He will become the next president of the United States. I think it's fair to say, Anderson, that millions and millions of people, not only in the United States but around the world, and they're watching here on CNN and CNN International in more than 240 countries and territories, they will never forget where they were precisely when it was reported at 11 p.m. on the East Coast of the United States, when we reported that Barack Obama will become the president-elect of the United States. It's one of those rare moments people will always remember where they were.
It will be when Barack Obama takes the stage there at Grant Park in front of that crowd, which has been there, has been slowly building throughout the evening, a crowd which more than anything, I think right now, wants to see Barack Obama and his wife and their children and Joe Biden on that stage, as if to confirm what we already know, but just to confirm that Barack Obama will be the next president of the United States. It will be a remarkable moment for those Obama supporters who thought the moment when he accepted the Democratic nomination. Ed Rollins, Ed, you've seen a lot of races, nothing like this clearly.
There's never been anything like this. I mean, you had it someone who 2 years ago, a survey was done pitting him head-to-head with McCain. He won Illinois and Hawaii and District of Columbia. In the course of 2 years, he beat the Democrat establishment, a very strong candidate who was presumed to be the nominee and possibly the president. He beat back a very strong candidate, raised unprecedented amounts of money. He had the biggest volunteer army ever, ran the most disciplined campaign I've seen in 40 years, and it did not make a single major mistake from start to finish. And that's pretty extraordinary, and I think the country rewarded him.
You know, it wasn't easy for him, and he did make mistakes. Remember the Reverend Wright, and remember lots of folks felt that he needed to distance himself from Reverend Wright sooner than he did, and he had some foreign policy issues on the Russia.
Let us come together and power.
Bitterness over guns, but here's a rookie candidate.
It wasn't major mistakes.
A rookie candidate, but an amazingly well-run campaign that understood the process better than the professionals in the Hillary Clinton
created
campaign.
a campaign too from nothing. I mean, against a candidate, Hillary Clinton, you know, well-funded, incredibly well-known, had a huge number of very experienced people around her to really create something from whole cloth. I mean, it is unheard of.
And it was a modern campaign in a way that we didn't think there could be a modern campaign. You know, he took his community organizing ability and wedded it to the internet. And did something that was so different from any other campaign that's ever been done. He also, by the way, has 3 million contributors in his database who are not simply going to go away, who will be a powerful lobbying force for his agenda. So that's a significant thing to remember looking forward.
We understand President Bush has called President-elect Barack Obama to congratulate him. We're going to take a short break. We're anticipating Barack Obama arriving. We were, of course, going to bring that to you as soon as it happens. If it happens during a break, we will break into the break for you. Our coverage continues. We'll be right back.
Be with his wife and his family, with his children, especially in this time.
Truly historic night here in the United States. Barack Obama will become the 44th president of the United States. A very, very decisive and impressive win in the Electoral College. And we're going to update our viewers, Anderson.
And we're also expecting Barack Obama to appear and speak before an assembled crowd of several thousand, at the very least, assembled in Grant Park in Chicago. We're going to bring that to you live as well.
Once he starts speaking, we'll go there. We're anxious to hear what he has to say. As you note, he's not only received the congratulatory call, the concession statement from Senator McCain, but we're told that, as you pointed out, President Bush has already called him to congratulate him and to invite him to come to the White House with his family, get used to what's going to be in store for him, at least for the next 4 years. Let me walk over and update our viewers on how Barack Obama did this tonight. First of all, with a popular vote. Let's take a look at the popular vote right now, with 65% of the vote now in throughout the United States. So far, Barack Obama has 51% to John McCain's 48%. It's an advantage of about 3,099,000. That's with 65% of the vote in. As important as the popular vote is, it's not important enough. This is a really important vote, the Electoral College vote right now. And by our projection, Barack Obama already has 338 Electoral College votes. John McCain, 155. You need 270 to be elected president of the United States. He has more than 270. All those blue states are states that Barack Obama has won. The red states are states that John McCain has won. The yellow states are states that we still cannot project a winner in those states, including in Virginia. Including in North Carolina, in Indiana, Missouri, and Montana. Alaska, they haven't closed the polls yet in Alaska, but we're expecting that state will wind up for John McCain. Now, let's take a look and see how he put together this win tonight, and we'll go to some of the projections that we have, how he did it. I want to first of all, put up on the screen. Well, we'll do that in a moment. But Anderson, I guess one of the critical moments was Florida. He carried Florida, obviously on the West Coast, California, Oregon, and Washington State. That was more than enough to put it together. But the fourth largest state in the United States, Florida, was clearly a huge win because both of these candidates spent so much time trying to win Florida, and Barack Obama won Florida.
There's also a number of important Senate races that we're continuing to look at, some House races, also the ballot initiative in California, the Prop 8 about marriage equality. We'll try to bring our viewers an update on that. A lot ahead in these next couple hours to keep watching.
Yeah, just to talk about Florida for a minute, Anderson, what was so interesting to me is we all knew that it was going to be close and tight there, but Barack Obama used his money wisely there. He outspent John McCain 4-1, visited the state a tremendous amount of times, but also identified 600,000 African-American voters who had been registered to vote in the last election but didn't show up. Identified each one of those voters and made sure that they turn out for this election. In the end, we don't know yet. That may have provided the margin for him. We just don't know.
It's pretty clear now that his popular vote, his majority is going to be the largest we have seen since Lyndon Johnson, and that is a significant achievement. It's also pretty clear that his Electoral College vote is now going to make him, that he has reached what he hoped to do, and that was to become a national winner and not just a winner in the blue states plus one. I mean, he has really... pulling in Florida and North Carolina, Florida and Virginia, possibly North Carolina, gives him that southern base. Pulling in now New Mexico, looks like Nevada and Colorado.
And that makes a difference when he actually gets to Washington.
It makes a very big difference, Anderson. In the perception that he is a national president. He represents all sections of the country. He is not a bi-coastal president alone. Yes, his great strength is in the West and in the Northeast, but he's more national. I also think it strengthens the perception he represents everybody. But I also think it puts a burden on him to represent everybody. And to go back to an earlier conversation, whether you govern from essentially the center-left or you govern from the left, I think in order to keep that coalition together, that's going to push him, and a lot of the people are going to be coming with him in the House of Representatives especially, but also some of these senators to be more of a center-left president.
If anything, the way he ran his campaign, though, seemed to be reaching out to as many diverse groups as possible, whereas the McCain campaign seemed, rightly or wrongly, to be whittling down the groups that they were appealing to.
I think that's absolutely right. But remember how often the John McCain just did give a very generous valedictory there, and good for him, and Sarah Palin, but how often they accused of Barack Obama of being the most liberal member of the Senate. This is going to be a liberal cabal, and it's going to be represent, you know, a very small, the elites of the country. This is not what this victory is about. It represents masses of Americans, and in a way that really sends a very different signal to everybody. Wait a minute, I got elected by much of the country, and I have strength in all sections of the country.
Take a look at some of these numbers. You got 96% of the African-American vote. This is off exit polls, the latest that we've had. 67% of the Latino vote, 66% of the youth vote, 68% of the new voters voting, which made up 11% of the electorate, 68% of them. So there is definitely this message of inclusion that seemed to resonate. And I agree that there is this issue of how do you appeal to everybody at all times. That's a bigger challenge when you're campaigning and promising things as opposed to campaigning and being elected and then delivering things. But also, it's a symbol of a new America, the America of 2050, where minorities make up the majority in this country. That is the point in the census, where minorities will be the minority, and the face of America is changing. It's not Joe the plumber.
And in terms of his use of power, which he will have, believe me, he can go to members of Congress and say, you know what, I brought you here. You're going to owe me one. And he can go to conservatives that way, and he can go to liberals that way. And so in the end, he can become a conciliator, even though lots of people say he's a liberal. His nature is to be a conciliator, and I think he has a great opportunity to do that right now in the Congress.
He has an opportunity tonight. The speech tonight now becomes very, very important, because this is his moment when he shows how he's
it's not just about celebrating tonight, it's about looking forward.
It's looking forward.
And I think the Trump part, too, and particularly in Florida, when we're talking about Florida, obviously the economic situation really dominated there, because McCain thought that the older voters were going to go his way. He didn't really think he was going to have to fight for Florida in the way that he had to. And despite the older voters being in Florida, they were, as was mentioned before, hit by this economic situation with the housing situation. And then the other Trump, obviously, is that youth voter. Year after year, election after election, we always talk about the young people being energized and inspired and getting out, and then they never turn up or they never turn out. Well, this is the election. This was the year they did actually turn out, and it was in Obama's favor.
Also, for the first time in Florida, a Democrat won a majority of the Latino vote. Talking about that generation. I mean, that is, Matt Barretto's been sending emails all night talking about how critical that is. And when Bill was here earlier, we were talking about this shift. What you're seeing is California, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada. You're seeing it, not necessarily in Texas, Florida. This whole new coalition, Democrats don't have to rely on 45, 50% in terms of white voters, in terms of the whole coalition. And so, you know, how they run campaigns, Obama has shown even how that changes the kind of campaigns you're going to see over the next 4 years in terms of how they do the whole outreach. And so I think from a Republican standpoint, how Bush did so well in 2004 with Hispanics, I mean, they have a serious issue now as to how they position this party to win elections
this is like
going forward.
Jesus for the Republican Party, certainly in many ways. Well, I mean, on so many levels.
One Jesus.
On so many levels, I've got to believe, and I've written on this, that this is really an eye-opener for the Republican Party, and it does have to reevaluate and reassess, and I believe it will in so many in ways as it relates to the conservatism, the moderate message, the moderates within the party, minorities. I think that this conversation is something that has had to be had with the party starting back in 2006.
The independent voters are so important in this election.
Absolutely.
McCain, when he was an independent, was running ahead of the Republican brand. When he became more of a tax and spend, old-fashioned Republican, and maybe my Republican friends would argue with me about this, he didn't do as well. And so, you know, now I think with the new president, in Barack Obama, it's like a great national Rorschach test. You look at him, and what do you see? And to the liberals, they might see a liberal. Right. And to the moderates, you might see a moderate. We just don't know what it's going to be.
Getting emails, African Americans see African American. I'm getting emails from whites who say, yeah, but he's also half white.
Exactly.
I mean, the bottom line is, the guy is.
This is why he has to represent all of America. There's a lot we can be inspired by, but he's the president for all of America.
We understand President-elect Obama is on site in the location at Grant Park. We are, of course, going to bring you his comments live. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, most likely Barack Obama. Do you have a call-in number for Oprah?
All right, we got some live pictures coming in from the White House. I want you to take a look at this. This is right outside the White House on Pennsylvania Avenue. Lots of folks in Washington, D.C. have just come over there to celebrate the election of Barack Obama as the 44th president of the United States. Campbell, you know, both of us are former White House correspondents. We know that area quite well. This is sort of just a spontaneous reaction, and we're seeing this all over the country.
I know. We've been hearing anecdotally stories from friends and family here in New York City. People are out in the streets in Times Square, in Harlem, in various neighborhoods in New York, and clearly we're seeing it in Washington as well, celebrating tonight. It's like it's New Year's Eve.
Celebrating all over the country, a moment that a lot of people never thought they would see, but they're seeing it right now. I know you have a very special guest you want to talk to.
We do. We want to take you to Atlanta, to the Ebenezer Baptist Church. We have the youngest daughter joining us of Martin Luther King Jr., Bernice King, joining us right now. And Bernice, just give me a sense of what this night, what this moment means to you.
You know, it means to me that the work that my mother and father sacrificed for was not in vain. And I'm so honored just to be connected to their bloodline. I was very touched tonight and moved to tears when I heard the announcement. And I know that this is something that my father would be proud of America for. He would be proud of the many young people who turned out the polls to make this possible. And it's a new dawning of a day in America.
And Bernice, we can hear the celebration happening there, obviously. Where you are, it's extremely loud, but give me a sense for how you believe Barack Obama has said he's going to bring this country together after an election that was this difficult, this tough, this nasty at times, so polarizing. How does he bring people together now?
Well, you know, it's a process, and I think he will do it the same way he's tried to do it even in his campaign. I mean, President Obama, I'm trying to get used to that, is a bridge builder. And I think he will continue to talk about building bridges. I think he will talk about overcoming the divide and getting all of us focused on one thing so that we can move America forward and address the pressing needs that affect so many of us. And I think if he just focuses on the things that he's focused on, healthcare. Can you hear?
I gotcha.
Hello?
All right, I think we're losing our Bernice King joining us there. You can hear a loud, extremely exuberant celebration at the Ebenezer Baptist Church down in Atlanta. Bernice, we want to thank you very much for being with us for the second, and throw it now to Anderson.
Thanks very much. We're told we're within 2 minutes of Barack Obama talking to the crowds at Grant Park. Of course, you can see right now the crowds are there. Clearly, they know he is there as well. They are waiting to hear from the president-elect. David Gergen, you're saying in terms of what Barack Obama is likely to speak about tonight, it's not just a night of celebration. It's a time to look forward. It's a time to talk already about governing.
I think they have designed this, as I understand it from the Obama team, they want to get off to a very fast start. They want to open their transition office tomorrow at noon. He's going to give a press conference.
They're going to open their transition office tomorrow.
Tomorrow at noon is what I understand. That's what they were planning. He wants to name his new chief of staff tomorrow if possible. He wants to name his transition chief. He wants to get moving very quickly. He's always looked forward to this moment when he can make the transition to governing. That's what really is important. And so I think he wants, I mean, I've already gotten a copy of an email he's now sent out to all his supporters saying, You're great. You're terrific. Thank you for your passion, all your support. And I'm going to be back to you soon about what we need to do next.
Right. He's going to govern that way.
He's going to govern that way. He's going to draw upon this internet to mobilize these hundreds of thousands of people.
And in terms of transition, I mean, this is a campaign that has planned everything, and they have planned the transition since last May, since before he was the nominee, very early on, started since last May. And when he went to visit his grandmother for the last time in Hawaii, he took along with him a large transition memo that he read on the airplane, because they were well along the way in planning their government, as it should be, by the way.
But it can't all be, let me talk to you about politics, folks.
No.
It's going to be,
not tonight.
He is a symbol of so much to so many. And while things do not change overnight, clearly, for African Americans and minorities in this country, it is a symbol to so many people who have waited a long time, and also a symbol to a new generation, a bridge, literally.
We're told we're just a few seconds away. Let's listen in to what the crowds there are listening to as we await the arrival on stage of President-elect Barack Obama.
Ladies and gentlemen, the next First Family of the United States of America.
Hello, Chicago. If there is anyone out there who thinks it's the answer told by lines that stretched around schools and churches in numbers this nation has never seen, by people who waited 3 hours and 4 hours, many for the first time in their lives, because they believed that this time must be different, that their voices could be that difference. It's the answer spoken by young and old, rich and poor, Democrat and Republican, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, Native American, gay, straight, disabled and not disabled, Americans who sent a message to the world that we have never been
just a collection of individuals or a collection of red states and blue states. We are and always will be the United States of America. It's the answer that led those who've been told for so long by so many to be cynical and fearful and doubtful about what we can achieve, to put their hands on the arc of history and bend it once more toward the hope of a better day. It's been a long time coming, but tonight, because of what we did on this day, in this election, at this defining moment, change has come to America. A little bit earlier this evening, I received an extraordinarily gracious call from Senator McCain. Senator McCain fought long and hard in this campaign, and he's fought even longer and harder for the country that he loves. He has endured sacrifices for America that most of us cannot begin to imagine. We are better off for the service rendered by this brave and selfless leader. I congratulate him. I congratulate Governor Palin for all that they've achieved, and I look forward to working with them to renew this nation's promise in the months ahead. I want to thank my partner in this journey, a man who campaigned from his heart and spoke for the men and women he grew up with on the streets of Scranton and rode with on the train home to Delaware, the Vice President-elect of the United States, Joe Biden. And I would not be standing here tonight without the unyielding support of my best friend for the last 16 years, the rock of our family, the love of my life, the nation's next First Lady, Michelle Obama. Sasha and Malia, I love you both more than you can imagine, and you have earned the new puppy that's coming with us to the White House. And while she's no longer with us, I know my grandmother's watching, along with the family that made me who I am. I miss them tonight. I know that my debt to them is beyond measure. To my sister Maya, my sister Alma, all my other brothers and sisters, thank you so much for all the support that you've given me. I am grateful to them. To my campaign manager, David Plouffe, the unsung hero of this campaign, who built the best political campaign, I think, in the history of the United States of America. To my chief strategist, David Axelrod, who's been a partner with me every step of the way. To the best campaign team ever assembled in the history of politics, you made this happen, and I am forever grateful for what you've sacrificed to get it done. But above all, I will never forget who this victory truly belongs to. It belongs to you. It belongs to you. I was never the likeliest candidate for this office. We didn't start with much money or many endorsements. Our campaign was not hatched in the halls of Washington. It began in the backyards of Des Moines, in the living rooms of Concord, and the front porches of Charleston. It was built by working men and women who dug into what little savings they had to give $5 and $10 and $20 to the cause. It grew strength from the young people who rejected the myth of their generation's apathy, who left their homes and their families for jobs that offered little pay and less sleep. It drew strength from the not-so-young people who braved the bitter cold and scorching heat to knock on doors of perfect strangers, and from the millions of Americans who volunteered and organized and proved that more than 2 centuries later, a government of the people, by the people, and for the people has not perished from the earth. This is your victory. Now, I know you didn't do this just to win an election. And I know you didn't do it for me. You did it because you understand the enormity of the task that lies ahead. For even as we celebrate tonight, we know the challenges that tomorrow will bring are the greatest of our lifetime. 2 wars, a planet in peril, the worst financial crisis in a century. Even as we stand here tonight, we know there are brave Americans waking up in the deserts of Iraq and the mountains of Afghanistan to risk their lives for us. There are mothers and fathers who will lie awake after their children fall asleep and wonder how they'll make the mortgage, or pay their doctor's bills, or save enough for their child's college education. There's new energy to harness, new jobs to be created, new schools to build, and threats to meet, alliances to repair. The road ahead will be long. Our climb will be steep. We may not get there in 1 year or even in 1 term. But America, I have never been more hopeful than I am tonight that we will get there. I promise you, we as a people will get there. Setbacks and false starts. There are many who won't agree with every decision or policy I make as president. And we know the government can't solve every problem. But I will always be honest with you about the challenges we face. I will listen to you, especially when we disagree. And above all, I will ask you to join in the work of remaking this nation the only way it's been done in America for 221 years. Block by block, brick by brick, calloused hand by calloused hand. What began 21 months ago in the depths of winter cannot end on this autumn night. This victory alone is not the change we seek. It is only the chance for us to make that change. And that cannot happen if we go back to the way things were. It can't happen without you, without a new spirit of service, a new spirit of sacrifice. So let us summon a new spirit of patriotism, of responsibility, where each of us resolves to pitch in and work harder and look after not only ourselves but each other. Let us remember that if this financial crisis taught us anything, it's that we cannot have a thriving Wall Street while Main Street suffers. In this country, we rise or fall as one nation, as one people. Let's resist the temptation to fall back on the same partisanship and pettiness and immaturity that has poisoned our politics for so long. Let's remember that it was a man from this state who first carried the banner of the Republican Party to the White House, a party founded on the values of self-reliance and individual liberty and national unity. Those are values that we all share. And while the Democratic Party has won a great victory tonight, we do so with a measure of humility and determination to heal the divides that have held back our progress. As Lincoln said to a nation far more divided than ours, we are not enemies, but friends. Though passion may have strained, it must not break our bonds of affection. And to those Americans whose support I have yet to earn, I may not have won your vote tonight, but I hear your voices. I need your help, and I will be your president too. And all those watching tonight from beyond our shores, from parliaments and palaces, to those who are huddled around radios in the forgotten corners of the world, our stories are singular, but our destiny is shared. And a new dawn of American leadership is at hand. To those who would tear the world down, we will defeat you. To those who seek peace and security, we support you. And to all those who have wondered if America's beacon still burns as bright, tonight we proved once more that the true strength of our nation comes not from the might of our arms or the scale of our wealth, but from the enduring power of our ideals: democracy, liberty, opportunity, and unyielding hope. That's the true genius of America, that America can change. Our union can be perfected. What we've already achieved gives us hope for what we can and must achieve tomorrow. This election had many firsts and many stories that will be told for generations, but one that's on my mind tonight is about a woman who cast her ballot in Atlanta. She is a lot like the millions of others who stood in line to make their voice heard in this election, except for one thing. Ann Nixon Cooper is 106 years old. She was born just a generation past slavery, a time when there were no cars on the road or planes in the sky, when someone like her couldn't vote for two reasons: because she was a woman and because of the color of her skin. And tonight, I think about all that she's seen throughout her century in America: the heartache and the hope, the struggle and the progress, the times we were told that we can't, and the people who pressed on with that American creed: yes, we can. At a time when women's voices were silenced and their hopes dismissed, she lived to see them stand up and speak out and reach for the ballot: yes, we can. When there was despair in the Dust Bowl and depression across the land, she saw a nation conquer fear itself with a New Deal, new jobs, a new sense of common purpose: yes, we can. When the bombs fell on our harbor and tyranny threatened the world, she was there to witness a generation rise to greatness and a democracy was saved: yes, we can. She was there for the buses in Montgomery, the hoses in Birmingham, a bridge in Selma, and a preacher from Atlanta who told the people that we shall overcome: yes, we can. A man touched down on the moon. A wall came down in Berlin. A world was connected by our own science and imagination. And this year, in this election, she touched her finger to a screen and cast her vote. Because after 106 years in America, through the best of times and the darkest of hours, she knows how America can change. Yes, we can. America, we have come so far. We have seen so much, but there's so much more to do. So tonight, let us ask ourselves, if our children should live to see the next century, if my daughters should be so lucky to live as long as Ann Nixon Cooper, what change will they see? What progress will we have made? This is our chance to answer that call. This is our moment. This is our time to put our people back to work and open doors of opportunity for our kids, to restore prosperity and promote the cause of peace, to reclaim the American dream and reaffirm that fundamental truth that out of many we are one, that while we breathe, we hope, and where we are met with cynicism and doubt, and those who tell us that we can't, we will respond with that timeless creed that sums up the spirit of a people. Yes, we can. Thank you. God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America.
President-elect Barack Obama and the next First Lady of the United States. He dug deep in those remarks. He tried to reach this moment. This is a moment that millions and millions of people will never forget. On this day, the next president of the United States has been elected. He will become the 44th president of the United States and the first African-American president of the United States. Joe Biden was there. You saw his 90-year-old mother. You can only imagine what she is going through right now. Both of the families were there. The Obama family, the Biden family, and there you see Jesse Jackson, the Reverend Jesse Jackson, among the approximately 125,000 people or so estimated to be in that crowd at Grant Park in Chicago. Along the lake, they gathered there to celebrate this moment, and they gathered there hours before they knew for sure that Barack Obama would be elected president of the United States. This is a real historic moment. I don't think we can overemphasize how significant this is. I think it's the last time a president-elect had a night like this. Really, you got to go back to 1992, November, when Bill Clinton became the president-elect, because in 2000, when George W. Bush, with hindsight, won the election, it took about 30 days for that recall and recount to take place, so he really couldn't celebrate as Barack Obama is doing on this night, as Bill Clinton did back in Little Rock in 1992. So they're going to enjoy it. They're going to appreciate what's going on. And we're going to stay on top of this story, because how he did it is a story that we're going to share with you. Our coverage will continue. We're here at the CNN Election Center. We're watching it when we come back. Back to our continuing coverage. You've just seen Barack Obama, the president-elect, speaking to a crowd of believed to be about 125,000 ticketed and non-ticketed people in Grant Park in Chicago. Truly a remarkable evening. There's still a lot of ballot initiatives ahead that we are looking at, as well as state Senate races, as well as congressional races, important Senate races in particular to look at. But that speech, David Gergen, was it what you expected?
Very much so. In fact, it was better than I expected, because it had a real lilt to it in the end. It had the rhythmic quality, and I think telling the story of the 106-year-old woman voting, standing in line, and then telling and having his peroration be through her life experiences, and using the "yes, we can." That was very much a rally speech. And then much of the rest of it was almost like an inaugural address. And it wove those two qualities together in a very nice way. Very gracious, and it wasn't about him. You know, a lot of these speeches by politicians are all about how I'm doing and how I feel. This was about us, about you, the voters.
It's amazing also watching Barack Obama on that stage. I mean, I remember him saying a couple of days ago, when, you know, with him, the highs don't get too high and the lows don't get too low, that there is this sort of this calmness, which we've seen throughout this campaign, but we certainly saw it tonight on that stage.
Well, the one thing that is stuck in my mind this entire campaign is that whenever you heard, you're right, David, all the other candidates talk about what they wanted to do. It's always what I'm going to do as president. He consistently said, we, us, our. Anybody who's had a successful marriage, they know it's not I, my, it's we, us, our. And what he's doing is, in many ways, I think about the story of Nehemiah rebuilding the wall of Jerusalem. The most important part of that, Nehemiah had the vision, but then the people said, let us rebuild. And what he is saying is, look, I can't do this alone. You are going to have to carry this cross as well. And by challenging the people as well, they have to assume some responsibility. That's very important in this age where we're looking just for one person to do all the work.
Earlier in the night, David, you quoted the mountaintop speech from Martin Luther King, and you heard those words.
Oh, yes.
I mean, he basically took the text of the mountaintop speech and squeezed it and pushed it and moved a little bit. It may be a year, or it may not. We may not make it in a term. But I promise you, we will get there as a people. Didn't say as a black people, but as Martin Luther King said, as a people, we will get there. It was the exact same refrain that Martin Luther King gave on the speech he gave the night before he was assassinated.
I haven't talked to our panel over here. Hillary Rosen also joining us. Your thoughts tonight? We haven't talked to you yet.
I thought that he, in some ways, played down the historic nature of him being the first black president. And, you know, he said this victory isn't the change we seek. It only gives us the chance to make the change that we seek. And, you know, I was listening to that and thought, for my biracial kids, this is very much the change we seek. And the work starts tomorrow, but, you know, no one should underestimate how important this night was.
But you have no doubt that the work does start tomorrow. I mean, Barack Obama is well aware of the challenges this country faces.
Oh, absolutely, and he's far down the road. Some of our other correspondents have said that. He's going to name his chief of staff tomorrow. He's going to get moving.
Do we know who it
is?
is?
I think it's one of these deals, as Tubin says about the Supreme Court, those who know aren't talking, and those who are talking don't know. But
I'll assume that means you know, but you're not talking.
This is a very carefully planned operation from day one. It has been for the campaign. It's been for the transition.
You can say you're dodging. You don't have to pretend.
Does it look like I'm dodging?
Well, yeah. Your body is actually contorted.
There have been lots of rumors that have been going around Washington, and I've heard some of them.
Do we know over here, Gloria?
Not rumors.
Gloria? Okay, well, please, go ahead.
To Paul Begala, rather bluntly. Rahm Emanuel, the congressman from Illinois. Look at that camera right now and tell us whether or not he is going to be the White House chief of staff.
I do not know. I do not know. The last time I checked, no offers had been made. Now, my guess is sometime in the next day or two, probably tomorrow, Senator Obama's going to pick his chief of staff. There's been other names that have been mentioned. But I don't want to get off on that. I want to
friends with Rahm to break that story.
First of all, I can't because it wouldn't be accurate. I don't think anything's been offered, as far as I know. Last time I checked with several of the people that have been talked about. But I think what's impressive about this speech, if I can get back to that as an old speechwriter, is his tone was sober, serious, almost even somber. And some of it because of the loss in his family. You could see that in his heart and etched in his face. But I was really impressed. I mean, it is easy for a politician on victory night to get them screaming, right? He hushed that crowd, and he got them thinking and feeling, and he reached out, I think, wonderfully to those Americans, as he said, whose votes I did not win, but whose support I need, or something like that. It was wonderful. It was a terrific speech, but what I liked about it is that it wasn't triumphalist at all. I think this is a man who understands the burden that he's about to assume.
I thought it was also interesting, the crowd at this event compared to the McCain event, and perhaps it's the difference between a crowd whose candidate has won and a crowd whose candidate has not. They cheered John McCain when his name was mentioned. There were boos at the other event when Barack Obama was mentioned.
Yeah, and it's no fun to lose. And some of the crowds at some of the rallies, for Palin particularly, have been pretty offensive. I did not think that was offensive tonight. At the Biltmore, you're there, you're hoping your guy wins. I understand that. They're expressing their disappointment. McCain handled it like a real pro.
But the fact that Barack Obama was so clear about pointing out to people that I want to be your president too, for those whose support I have not earned, that says something not just about the kind of campaign he's run, but how he expects to govern. And, you know, we have learned a few things about his administration. Paul was being circumspect about it, but a chief of staff like Rahm Emanuel, should that be the case, since many of us have heard that's the case, is somebody who also has been a member of Congress. He's quite partisan, but he knows how to get things done. And I think the key thing that Barack Obama said tonight was, we want to get things done, and it's going to be hard. And I'll be honest with you when I can do it, and I will be honest with you when I think that we're in trouble. And those key moments of being smart about how to make things happen, I think, is really going to be the essence of this presidency for a while.
The crowds are still there in Grant Park. I want to go to Candy Crowley, who has been following this campaign as long as anybody. Candy, your thoughts not only on this victory for Barack Obama tonight, but also on his words tonight.
Well, it's interesting to me that he really did take much of what he said on the campaign trail here, but this wasn't a campaigner that came out here tonight. This was a man ready to be president. His demeanor was different. He really sort of took the moment. I don't know if you noticed the music, but it was very regal, sort of presidential music. The setting was that. There was no rally feel to it at all. This was a man who definitely came out here wanting to be the president, as he has just been elected to do. And I think back to February of 2007 when I was in Springfield, as he announced. He's a very changed man as well, just in how he handles himself and what he talks about. And he came out as president. He really did. And I think that's the speech we saw tonight. Even with the yes, we can, you heard it was a yes, we can, as opposed to that kind of way he did it in the rally. So this was taking what he talked about and putting it in presidential form, if you will. I also think that so much of this campaign played to people's hopes. You know, that he gave them a chance to hope again. Anybody at any rally would tell you that. And I thought this was the somber night to say, we can still get there, and we're going to get there, but let's not think it's going to happen tomorrow. And I think if you remember, when we had the off-year elections in '06, everybody thought the war would stop the next day because the Democrats were put into control. And I think this was very much Barack Obama trying to say, steady now. We won tonight, but this is serious stuff we're about to face, and it's not going to happen overnight.
Candy, we'll be talking to you throughout this evening. A lot of coverage ahead. Also, check out CNN.com for the latest political news. We're still getting results in from various states, various ballot initiatives, also a lot of important Senate races and House races as well. Lots to talk about. Stay tuned.
And so the transition to power has now started. Barack Obama will get ready to become the next president of the United States throughout this month of November, December, and then January. Leading up to January 20th, he'll have an opportunity to try to organize a smooth transition to become the 44th president of the United States. And we already know that the current president, President George W. Bush, has promised to do everything he can to make sure this is a smooth transition, and that Barack Obama and Joe Biden, the next vice president of the United States, will get everything they need to make sure that this process goes forward smoothly and on time. It's not going to be easy, but we're told he's going to start as early as tomorrow getting things going. The new president-elect. Bill Schneider is watching all of this over at Voter Analysis. And you're coming up with the numbers, how he managed to put this all together. Bill?
Very much, Wolf. This was a victory for the youth vote. They call this a victory for the new America, and that's certainly what young people were voting for. Let's take a look at the country as a whole. Look at voters who were under 30 years old. Two-thirds of them, 66%, voted for Barack Obama. Let's go one age category up, 30 to 44-year-olds. How did they vote? A little less, 52 to 46 for Obama. What about 45 to 64-year-olds nationwide? They split. 50% Obama, 49% for McCain. The one group of voters who did not support Barack Obama, and they were the holdouts, were seniors who voted for their fellow senior, John McCain. He got 53% of the senior vote. Obama just 45%. So the older the voting group, the less support for Obama, the more support for John McCain. It is true, Wolf, this was a victory for the young Americans.
Bill Schneider looking at all the numbers for us. Bill, thanks very much. And so the transition to power will begin. We're told tomorrow it will begin with President-elect Obama naming a transition team. And we're told that John Podesta, a former White House chief of staff under Bill Clinton, will be among those leading in this transition, together with Valerie Jarrett, another top advisor to Barack Obama, and as well as his Senate chief of staff, Peter Rouse, as well. All right, we're watching all of this. I want to show you what we know right now, with 76% of the popular vote now officially in, 48% for John McCain, 51% for Barack Obama. He's ahead by almost 4 million votes, 76% of the vote now. And if it stays above 50%, he would have a majority going into the White House. On the electoral vote right now, still 4 states that we cannot yet project a winner. Alaska, they haven't closed their polls. They closed their polls at 1 a.m. here on the East Coast. But right now, Barack Obama has 338 electoral votes to 156 for John McCain, much more than the 270 needed to be elected president of the United States. We'll take a quick break. CNN.com, you can get all the latest information on all the Senate races, the House races, the governor's races, ballot initiatives, and a lot more. We'll update you on what we know right after this.
And welcome back. Our coverage continues. I want to talk about the transition to power a little bit. Gloria Borgia, you've been working on this. This is something the Obama campaign has been working on now for many months.
For many months, since last May, and Obama himself got very involved in this after the Democratic convention, I'm told. There are three things they know they need to do very quickly. First of all, their White House Chief of Staff, as we've been talking about. Secondly, their economic team, and then their national security team. Those are the sort of three things they want to get out of the way.
Same economic team that we've been seeing Barack Obama surround himself with?
Could be. Some of those names.
Or do we not know?
We don't know that. And I think people are encouraged by the kinds of people he's had around him and the names circulating for Treasury. Tim Geithner, head of the New York Federal Reserve, is a person who commands respect, I think, across the board, and is only 47 years old. And Larry Summers is another possibility. Some have talked about Paul Volcker coming in for a brief period of time, or possibly coming in some sort of counselor role. But this is one of the first times I can remember when the Secretary of the Treasury is going to be almost as important as the Secretary of State.
Right. And there's a question, because there's this big summit in mid-November now that they may put off naming their economic team so they don't interfere with the G20 summit.
Yeah, exactly. But to go to it, they do plan. He has been eager to get to the governing phase. And Ed Rollins was saying earlier tonight that, you know, on election day, he was having an hour-long meeting with somebody about Homeland Security. You know, somebody came in, have a really serious conversation about that. So I think he's been doing a lot more looking forward to this tomorrow than anybody really has.
I mean, how does that transition work in this country of ours? I mean,
they get a set of offices. They get essentially an office building in Washington, and they set up a government in waiting. And one of the things they're thinking about doing, Anderson, is they understand from studying past transitions that everything you do early on in a presidency gets magnified. You don't want to make the mistakes that Bill Clinton made. So they're thinking of doing some executive orders right away, right out of the box.
And for January.
For January, when he becomes president, and they're thinking about that now in transition. How would you do that?
What were the mistakes that Bill Clinton made that he wants to avoid, that you're referencing?
Appointments, Zoe, you know, all of his, well, David can tell us about them, but a lot of his appointments that got rejected by the Congress. Also, they have to think about whether they do an economic stimulus package in a lame duck session, whether they do a small one, and what they do about the economy when he takes charge. They don't want to kind of make any little mistake just becomes a big mistake and becomes how you can govern, right?
He also doesn't want to appear like he's not ready for prime time. And a lot of the criticisms of Clinton was, oh, he has too many young people around him, they're not experienced in Washington, what's going on. Obama, who is extremely methodical, who is very deliberate, I mean, he wants to bring it across that I am an absolute leader. I am in charge. And so I don't think you're going to see a lot of the bungling. I mean, when they vet, they're going to vet because he's going to say, we can't afford the mistakes.
The two things, Anderson, that are very different about this transition than from the Clinton transition or any other. A time of crisis, and he's a sitting senator. So that there's going to be a lame duck session coming up of Congress. They're coming back. What's the role of a president-elect who's also a sitting senator in that situation? Normally, presidents try very hard not to be a quasi-president or co-partner to the incumbent during the transition. Obama's going to be under an awful lot of pressure to begin making decisions during the transition, almost as a quasi-president. Hank Paulson, the Treasury Secretary, is opening up offices in the Treasury for people to come in from Obama's team and be there for him. And the office space that Gloria talks about, but it's the General Services Administration, which is sort of a general office building place for them. They have rented for the winter, no matter who it was, 100,000 square feet of office space. And that's going to be available, and that's what they hope to open tomorrow at noon.
We're going to take a short break. I want to get to our other panel as well. We have a lot more. Also, check out CNN.com for all the latest on politics. You can see the results of the races that we are still following coming in from around the country. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the CNN Election Center on this historic night when Barack Obama, the senator from Illinois, has been elected president of the United States. He will be sworn in on January 20th, 2009. Right now, his major mission is to make sure there is a smooth transition. And Valerie Jarrett is joining us from Chicago, one of his senior advisors. Valerie, congratulations to you. Well, I'll put it bluntly, how excited are you?
I am pretty excited. As you can tell tonight, it has been an extraordinary night here in Chicago, but it's an extraordinary night for our country. I'm so proud of Senator Obama and what he's accomplished with so many people helping him along the way. I think it says a great deal about our country that we could elect Senator Obama to be president-elect for the United States of America.
I know he was really nervous about a jinx. I interviewed him last Friday. He told me he was nervous about a jinx, but he's been preparing for a transition for some time. John Podesta, we know, has been working, giving him briefing papers, and we're told you'll be involved in helping him during this transition as well. Walk us through the process.
Well, you know what, this is what we're actually going to do. We're going to celebrate tonight. This is an extraordinary victory, and it's a time for us to come together and appreciate how far we've come. And in the days ahead, you'll be hearing more directly from Senator Obama, President-elect Obama, I should say, about the steps that he'll be taking to get prepared to lead on January 20th.
What does this mean to you personally as someone who's known Senator Obama for a long time?
It's hard to find the words to explain what this means to me. Of course, I've always known he was an extraordinary person, somebody of great intellect, of judgment and temperament that was even keel, and a kind, decent person, this core decency that I've appreciated in him over the 17 years that I've known him, and also known Michelle. But to see our country come alive the way it did, the energy and the enthusiasm, and there's so many people across our country who've become involved in this campaign. This campaign was really never about Barack Obama. It was about the American people. And the fact that they were willing to come together and work so hard to make this day happen just makes me feel like only in America could this happen.
Good point. Valerie, get some sleep tonight. Go ahead and celebrate, because you got to work hard starting tomorrow in this transition.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Valerie Jarrett. Congratulations to you once again. Let's update you now on some of these close Senate races that we've been watching. In Georgia right now, look at this. Senator Saxby Chambliss, he's slightly ahead, 51 to 46% over his challenger in Georgia, Jim Martin, 46%, 97% of the vote in. Remember, this is a state where you need to get a majority of more than 50% in order to be elected. There's a third-party candidate there. If he stays at 51%, and it looks like he might, Saxby Chambliss would hold on to that seat. That would be very important for the Republicans. In Minnesota, Norm Coleman slightly ahead of Al Franken right now with 71% of the vote now in. There is a third-party candidate in Minnesota as well, Dean Barkley, the independent candidate. You don't need a majority in Minnesota, so if Coleman holds on to that 43% to 41% lead, he would be reelected in Minnesota, but it's not over with yet. They still have lots of votes to count. And take a look at this. In the state of Oregon, it's been really, really tight. Gordon Smith, the incumbent Republican, he's slightly behind Dean Merkley, the Democratic challenger, 41% of the vote in, but it's obviously still early. Plenty of opportunities for those numbers to change. We'll watch those closely. I want to show you some other races that right now, Elizabeth Dole, the Republican senator, she loses to Kay Hagan right now with 99% of the vote in, 53% for Kay Hagan, and that's enough. Look at John Sununu. He loses in New Hampshire, the incumbent Republican, to the former Democratic governor, Jeanne Shaheen, with 72% of the vote now in New Hampshire. In Kentucky, the Republican incumbent, the minority leader, Mitch McConnell, he manages to hold on and win and get reelected in a relatively close race. Bruce Lunsford losing. In Colorado right now, Mark Udall, a congressman, he's going to be elected. The senator, that's a Democratic pickup, replacing an incumbent Republican who decided not to run again. And in New Mexico, his cousin, Tom Udall, he's going to be elected as well, another Democratic pickup. That's the seat that Pete Domenici gave up in New Mexico. And in the state of Maine, there will be the Republican incumbent, Susan Collins. She will stay in. She has been reelected in Maine. And in Louisiana, the Democrat incumbent, Mary Landrieu, she had a very tough race from John Kennedy, but she manages to hold on as well with 52%. In Mississippi, Thad Cochran, the incumbent Republican, he he holds on, wins relatively easily there, as you can see. So it doesn't look like the Democrats are going to be able to get up to that 60 majority, filibuster-proof majority in the Senate, because these vulnerable Republicans, several of them, as you just saw, managed to hold on. But there will be a significant pickup in the Democratic majority. Right now, it's 51 to 49, and it's going to go up. The balance of power, we're going to take a look at that.
And, Wolf, we do want to take a look at that. You had mentioned Louisiana. Mary Landrieu is keeping her seat there. That was the one seat that Democrats were really defending. The rest, Republican seats that have been shaky. John King, walk us through it. What we know now, as Wolf said, Democrats were trying to get to that magic number of 60. Doesn't look like they're going to do it.
Doesn't look like it. We'll show you the stakes so far, and those watching at home say, why does it matter so much? It matters hugely if you're President-elect Barack Obama and you're trying to get an agenda through the Congress. You want to know, number one, how many Democratic votes you have. You also want to know how much pressure you're going to come under from your own party trying to push things through. Before we go through the numbers, let's bring back your friend, Campbell. That would be the virtual Capitol, and put it on the table there. And let's start with the Senate, as we see. Let's bring the Senate up and take a peek. And as you watch this fill in, this is where we began the night. 51 Democrats, 49 Republicans. But here's what we know so far. Wolf just went through all those results, and this is what you get at the end of that, 56 to 40. So the Democrats +5, assuming Joe Lieberman stays in their caucus, and we'll deal with that down the road a little bit. But 4 races. You see the white tiles in the middle there. The Alaska race, that's Senator Ted Stevens, the longest-serving Republican in the Senate. Most believe this seat will go Democratic, but we're waiting. The polls are still open in the state of Alaska. Ted Stevens convicted just last week of 7 corruption charges. Democrats may pick up that one. That would give them, let's say for the hypothetical that they win that one. I just want to show how hard it is to get to 60. That's one they think they can get. This one, Wolf just talked about. Saxby Shambles is ahead. The question is, when the absentee ballots are counted, will he stay above 50%? So we'll leave this one as undecided for now and put it back. A very tight race out here in Oregon. Gordon Smith ahead at the moment, as Wolf just said, although I'm looking at updated results now, show the Democratic challenger slightly ahead at the moment. So we'll watch this one as these come in. But even if Democrats won them all, they would just get to 60. In Minnesota, of course, we've showed that earlier, Norm Coleman eking it out. The Democrats would have to win all of these left, Campbell, on the board, which at the moment appears unlikely, but we'll watch them as they come in. And then there is that one other question, what happens to Joe Lieberman? He is here. He is an independent who caucuses with the Democrats. Many Democrats would like to kick him out of the caucus because of his open support for John McCain, but more importantly...
And he hasn't really been caucusing with them lately either, Lieberman.
He has not been caucusing with them lately. He has not been caucusing with them. He hasn't been back in the Senate for some time. But he not only did he campaign for his friend John McCain, most Democrats understood that, but he was very harsh at the convention and in some of his public speeches about Barack Obama, who is now the president-elect of the United States. If the Democrats get to 59 and Joe Lieberman would be 60, and again, we're waiting for Minnesota, Oregon, Georgia, and I hypothetically called Alaska, but that's not really done, so we'll put that back there. And if they can get to 60, including Joe Lieberman, there'll be a lot of pressure to keep him there. But Dana Bash reporting a little bit earlier that Harry Reid, the Democratic leader, will have a meeting with him later in the week, and they will see what to do with that situation. A lot of pressure on Harry Reid to at least strip him of his chairmanship that he has, and many would like to kick him out of the caucus. So that's what we see. Democrats will have at least 56. And potentially 57, 58, 60 looks like a dream. And quickly, Campbell, I just want to bring up the House numbers, and we can switch the screens here and show you the House. And this is where we were at the beginning of the night, 236 to 199. A lot of counting to go on here in the House races. We do know they will pick up the Democrats, will a minimum of 16 seats. So Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker, will have a bigger Democratic majority of at least 252 Democrats. We expect that number to actually go a bit higher, perhaps substantially higher. But we know now, as we go through the 435 House races across the country, the Democrats will pick up at least 16. Some, Campbell, think that number will go in excess of 25 or even higher. We'll count those votes as we go on through the night.
So a lot of wind at Barack Obama's back as they actually try to get down to the business of governing based on the numbers we're looking at right now.
It is a blessing to have more Democrats to put your agenda through. It also could be a little pressure. The expectations on Barack Obama, one of the big tests, the first test will be, will he stand up to his own party if they try to push things that perhaps the middle of the country or the more conservative Democrats and the Republicans he promises to reach out to. That will be one of the fascinating dynamics we'll watch it play out for 70 days, a little more than that, until he's actually the president, and then, of course, once he is.
First 100 days. All right, John King for us, and let's turn back to Wolf. Wolf?
Thanks very much. Alaska, by the way, Campbell, Alaska has now closed the polls. That means that polls all over the United States are now closed. It's just after 1 a.m. here on the East Coast, and Alaska It's now official. That state is closed. We're watching, by the way, as John mentioned, an important Senate race there. The incumbent Ted Stevens, who's been convicted on those felony counts, he's facing very tough challenge from the popular mayor of Anchorage, Mark Begich. We'll update you on what we know on that race because that could affect, obviously, the balance of power. Ted Stevens, the longest-serving Republican in the United States Senate. Look at these pictures from Pennsylvania Avenue, just outside the White House. These are live pictures you're seeing right now. They're coming in. Folks have gathered in the District of Columbia right outside the White House to express their joy at Barack Obama's election tonight, and they're making that very, very clear. Just after 1 a.m. on the East Coast, and lots of people have gathered at the White House to celebrate the election of Barack Obama. We'll take a quick break. We'll continue our coverage right after this.
And welcome back to our continuing coverage. Got a lot to talk about. We're joined by some new panel guests, but first let's start with Alex Castellanos. You were listening closely to Barack Obama's speech before, and as we're talking about this transition of power, a particular line stood out to you.
Marvelous line, something you never hear an American politician say. He said, "I need your help," to the voters. Wow, that's tremendous. He said his campaign started with a simple idea: change begins from the bottom up. Well, that's not the way the U.S. government works. The seminal essay in wonk speak here, computer or software architecture, is called The Cathedral and the Bazaar. And the cathedral is the old way of doing things. It's the way Microsoft builds software. Hey, we're going to do it our way, worship in our church, or you don't get to do it at all. But the open source movement in computer engineering is people get together from all over the world and build computer software bottom up. Is Barack Obama going to be the old top-down industrial age cathedral leader, or is he going to be the fellow we heard tonight, this new generation of leadership that is very bottom up for the communications age? I think the only thing that hasn't changed in Washington in about 100 years is the U.S. government. Will we see a big generational change as well? And I think we could.
Hillary, you've been watching some of these ballot initiatives. In California, we've been watching Prop 8. We don't have results yet for that, but you've been watching some of the other ones.
Well, particularly for gays and lesbians, it hasn't been such a great night so far. There was a ballot measure in Florida to prevent same-sex marriage. It looks like that passed. There was a ban on gay adoption passed in Arkansas, and another ban on same-sex marriage in Arizona. So this sort of message of unity and tolerance Barack Obama's been spreading hasn't so far ascribed to...
Barack Obama actually mentioned gay people in his speech tonight, not something you actually hear from a presidential candidate, often talking to a wide audience.
Well, it's part of his Inclusive America speech, and I think it's really... he lives that, and I expect his administration to be that way. People I'm hearing from California are still holding out hope that some of those unreported counties are still going to defeat this Prop 8.
We actually got a vote board from Prop 8 on the wall. Let's take a look at it right now. 53% voting yes on Prop 8, 47% no on Prop 8. That's only 26% of the vote in. I'm not sure exactly where that vote has come from. It might make a big difference where the vote in California is coming from, but that's something we're going to be watching over the next couple hours.
San Francisco, Silicon Valley, those are low reporting so far.
All right, we'll be watching those numbers, see if they change. Leslie Sanchez, your thoughts on this evening?
I will. A lot of it's already been said. I think the interesting is the role of government. We know Republicans won 7 of the last 10 presidential elections, but the 30 years before that, Democrats won 7 of the last 9. It's this really, is it the start of a new kind of different role of government era? Very much so. I think he's the right candidate at the right time. But also remember, it took 20 years of kind of pro-government ideas before you saw a Ronald Reagan come back in terms of what does it mean for the Republican Party that we're saying enough of the government, now the government's the problem. I don't know if it's going to take 20 years to get to that point, but it's definitely a different time in looking at how government is going to work and support its people.
Carl?
I think it's a transformational moment that he intends to unite the country. He knows he has an opportunity to do so. I'm very moved and struck by the choice of where his speech was. Grant Park, which was the scene of the great battlefield in 1968 of the Democratic Party, that people were beaten. It marked the end of any kind of unity in the Democratic Party. And now he has picked that place to bring things together in the country. And his message was, this election in both parties was a message to both candidates from people from the bottom up saying, fix it. And I think he understands that, and now he's got to fix more than he intended to or bargained for because of the economic situation. But the opportunity to unite the country, he has a shot at it. He knows he does if you talk to his people, and he's going to try to do it.
And we're going to see some more from the People's House, the more we learn about these congressional races as the night goes on. The Democrats took seats in North Carolina, in Colorado, in Ohio, in Nevada, in some places where Democrats haven't succeeded before. And so you're really going to see Barack Obama having now expanded that map across the country with that ground-up support, using that. And some of them are more conservative Democrats. And so that is going to be, you know, this isn't sort of a liberal takeover of the Congress. This is really going to be sort of a unity, needing to be a unity effort here.
But 2006 saw that. I mean, you saw the rise of conservative Democrats. You know, that was part of the defeat of Republicans. But also on top of that is this kind of transformation of who's going to have power, more so in the Senate. I think the House is going to be more powerless.
But it turns these states purple. It turns these states that have historically had a majority of Republican congressional members into a much more diverse community, and I think that's part and parcel of the governing
practice. One thing we're going to see, I think, ultimately are ticket splitters. I mean, we haven't talked about that very much so, but you're talking about these ballot initiatives, you're talking about states like Indiana, you know, where you're really seeing a split between who they chose for their state leadership versus their presidential leadership, that we haven't seen ticket splitters in this kind of movement for 20 years.
One argument you could make, what does it take to elect a Democratic president? Well, one is it takes a hugely unpopular Republican president, and an unpopular Republican Party, an unpopular war, and an economic meltdown. But that's not enough. You also need a Democratic, an inspirational Democratic candidate who says he's going to cut taxes for 95% of Americans, which used to be what Republicans said, who says he likes Petraeus and Gates. We might open the door to oil drilling. In other words, it takes a Democrat who moves towards the middle, too.
But he understood the country at its moment better than anyone imagined. He really understood the moment when nobody else gave him a chance. But he understood, decided he would go for it at a time when Hillary Clinton was going to be the nominee of the party, a black man. He was going to take on this establishment, and he had the confidence that he could get there.
He understood the country and also how to win this race.
And that's why he'll understand how to govern. Because he understands the psyche of the country. He knows where the country is, whether it's in the center or it's center-right. And he's going to have enough power to say to Democrats...
Advocate, though,
yeah?
It's very easy on a night like this for his supporters to be caught up in this euphoria and caught up in all this stuff. But Washington is a completely, different animal. Washington is a different place with its own rules and its own universe. Are the supporters being sort of, pie-eyed when they're thinking that change is going to come?
People owe him, Anderson. He has power. He swept.
Mitch McConnell doesn't owe him.
No, Mitch McConnell doesn't owe him, and he understands that on the budget, for example, he's never going to get a Republican vote. But Republicans understand right now that the country, he's got a majority of the popular vote, the country wants him to succeed. And if they stand in his way, the country hated the the partisanship and all the rest. And if they stand in the way of that, then they could get blamed for it.
Amy, we haven't heard from you.
If I can jump in, but you do have a point, which is that the House rules is the majority rules there, and in the Senate, if the Democrats have picked up all of these seats, they only need to get a couple of squishy Republicans to be filibuster-proof, and then put that pressure on Barack Obama. Tonight for me, I look at those 47% of American voters who, even in this economic climate, voted for John McCain, and that's a bittersweet moment for them. And I appreciate when Barack Obama said tonight to those Republicans, to conservatives, independents who voted for him, I hear you, I need your help. We will see if that turns out to be the case. We saw in 2006 that Nancy Pelosi, she promised this new era of bipartisanship, and it didn't happen.
But this is where the we, us, our comes in. When you look at the rallies, when you look at the people who have gotten behind him, he is moving people to action. When he calls for the American people to participate in this process, what he's saying is, look, don't just sit here and say it's Washington, D.C., there's some separate entity. You are a part of this.
But you're an Obama supporter. There's 47% of the country right now who heard that message and say, you know what, I don't buy it.
Fine.
I don't buy his
You know
guy.
what? Look,
they're looking at his record. They're looking that he was ranked the most liberal senator by National Journal, which is not a partisan publication. And so they're hanging on that hope that he hears them and needs their help.
There's questions about that ranking, but
again, it's how do you challenge the people to participate in this? The problem we've always had is people complain about Washington, but they're the same people who send those folks to Washington. If he's able to touch the people where they are and say, come with me on this journey, they're going to move those members of Congress to also make changes.
Can I just say the Republican Party will be having an identity crisis starting now. They have to figure out where they are, who they are, what they support, what they don't support. And what Barack Obama has to do during this transition time is set the tone.
That's right.
Very important to set the tone. If he reaches out to Republicans in his cabinet, if he decides to keep Bob Gates at defense, that's really, really important. And what are his issues? Energy is an area where Democrats and Republicans can agree. So maybe he'll do that off the bat.
David, I mean, you've worked for Republican presidents, you've worked for Democratic presidents. Real change, how do you actually get change in Washington?
It's very tough. And this Washington has been paralyzed to the point of dysfunctionality for a long time. We all know that. I do think one of his great assets is that let's call him an army. These millions of people, especially young people, whom he is going to be able to mobilize through the internet and put pressure on. There's no Democrat in the past who's had that kind of grassroots capacity that he has had. But I do not think we should underestimate, or to use a George W. Bush word, misunderestimate just how tough this is going to be.
And also,
because I want to say one. While we watch these returns come in tonight, this one surprise that seems to be coming in is, I think a lot of us felt if Obama had a big victory as he's having now, 5-point victory, it's massive, that the Senate seats are not coming in quite the way we expected, and there's no indication that the House seats are coming in the way we expected for the Democrats. You know, we talked about 25 seats. So far, there are a number of races that are still outstanding, but so far we're talking 10, 12. So from that perspective, that suggests, to go back to Amy's point, that there is a significant portion of the population that's not there yet, that he is going to have to bring with him. And to get big things done in the United States Senate, you have to do more than 51 votes. You have to do more than 55. You have to get into the 65 area to really get big things done. And I think this is a tall mountain to climb. I think he's one of the few people we've ever seen who has the capacity to do it, has the potential to do it, but we should not...
By both personality and by mandate.
He's got a mandate. I think he has a better strategic sense than almost anybody we've seen in this office for a long time. He's emotionally a very healthy person, and he's not a needy politician. And that's going to make a big difference. And he's one of the most disciplined people we've ever seen. I think he is going to be so disciplined during this transition. In fact, I worry that he's not going to get enough rest.
And one indication that he's already disciplining Democrats, it's sort of a sliver of hope for those who didn't vote for Barack Obama tonight, was that earlier today, Harry Reid said at a rally in D.C. that this is not a mandate for ideology and it's not a mandate for party. I think that's echoing this idea that Obama's trying to get across tonight, at least, which is that he is going to try to reach out in a bipartisan way, but he will be getting pressure from the left wing of his party.
And if you take a look at the exit polls, what you see, the biggest obstacle for John McCain was George Bush. George Bush. I mean, that's really a lot of people who are voting against John McCain, voting for Barack Obama, really were voting because President Bush was the issue. And so it's not enough to have the army of supporters who are engaged and interested. We've got this other issue as well.
We've got a lot more ahead. Our coverage continues a couple more hours. Hey, how about that? Get some popcorn. We're still here. CNN.com is the website. Check it out. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
They're celebrating in Berkeley, California right now. There you're seeing some live pictures courtesy our affiliate KGO in Berkeley. This is a very Democratic area, but they're excited, they're thrilled These scenes, they're going on all over the country right now. That's because Barack Obama has been elected president of the United States. We want to welcome you back to our continuing coverage. I'm Wolf Blitzer here at the CNN Election Center, together with the best political team on television. I want to update you on some important Senate races. We have not yet projected winners in these Senate contests, but we'll update you on what we know. In Georgia right now, the incumbent Saxby Chambliss facing a tough challenge from Jim Martin, the Democrat. Right now with 97% of the vote in, Chambliss with 51%, Martin 46%. You need in Georgia more than 50% in order to win. If it's under 50%, they have to have a runoff election in December. Right now, Chambliss is ahead. It's looking pretty good for him right now. We'll continue to watch Georgia. The Democrats were hoping for a pickup in that state. We don't know if that's going to happen. In Minnesota right now, it's extremely close between the incumbent Republican Norm Coleman and the challenger Al Franken, the former comedy writer and comedian. It's only 7,653 votes apart, 42% for each of these candidates. There's a third-party candidate, Dean Barkley, an independent candidate running on the Independence Party. He's getting some votes as well. We're watching this race very closely. It doesn't get much closer than that. In the state of Oregon right now, the challenger, Jeff Berkley, is slightly ahead of Gordon Smith, the longtime Republican incumbent in Oregon, 48% to 47%, but only about 9,000 votes separate them. Only 42% of the vote in Oregon has been counted. Remember, these are paper ballots. Mailed ballots in Oregon. They do their elections, they're voting via mail, and they got to count a lot of ballots right now. We'll see what happens. We might not know for a while who's going to be the senator from Oregon. And in Alaska, they just closed the polls a few minutes ago at the top of the hour. The longtime incumbent Ted Stevens facing a very strong challenge from the Anchorage Mayor Mark Begich, but none of the votes have been tallied yet in Alaska. We're watching all of this very closely. Let me go back to Minnesota because we've included the third-party candidate, Dean Barkley. He's actually a former United States senator. He was named to succeed Paul Wellstone. Jesse Ventura, the former wrestler, he was then governor of Minnesota, named Dean Barkley to the U.S. Senate for a couple of months. He's getting about 15% of the vote. I don't know enough about Minnesota politics to know if he's taking votes potentially away from Norm Coleman, the incumbent Republican, or Al Franken, the challenger, but he's got 15% there, so he's doing relatively well for a third-party candidate. It's going to be very, very close. You see the numbers changing right now. Coleman ahead by about 10,000 with 82% of the precincts in. We're watching this race very, very closly. As of right now, it looks like the Democrats have increased their majority in the Senate by at least 5 seats from 51 to 56. It doesn't look like they're going to get to that magic number of 60, which is the filibuster-proof majority in the Senate, but we'll watch it together with you. You want to see more about all of this, go to CNN.com. We've got all the numbers coming in right there. We'll take another quick break. We'll be right back.
And welcome back. Our coverage continues. We're going to be showing you some crowd shots from around the country that we're still getting, and there are a lot of parties going on all night. I think Roland Martin, an Obama supporter, is still trying to make plans for, do you have a party set for where you're going to go?
Yeah.
Would you like me to tell you?
They've actually...
We have access to this information.
I see you've been working your phone. Normally, I would assume...
Since they, extended the, we're here to 3 a.m., so... I see. Car's waiting, but that's fine. I'll be there eventually.
Oh, poor thing with the car.
It's tough. In terms of what are you still looking for tonight, though, David Gergen? What?
A party. No, just kidding.
Well, I'm still looking for this is really interesting. We have up on the board here that Ted Stevens is running slightly ahead in Alaska.
Amazing.
I think there's some more results. We haven't called North Carolina. We haven't called Indiana. With almost all the votes counted, Barack Obama's got a slight lead in North Carolina. He's got a slight lead in Indiana. He's slightly behind in Missouri. So there's a few more pieces of the puzzle to fall.
And we should point out, I mean, Ted Stevens, 49% to 46% against Democratic challenger, with 37% of precincts reporting. I mean, it is a small lead, only some 4,360 voters. Ted Stevens has been convicted of crimes.
Oh, big deal.
But he's the godfather of Alaska. I mean, everybody still owes him, and so.
Well, you know, and Mitch McConnell, who won his re-election, and who's the leader of the Republicans, when asked about Ted Stevens' fate if he were to be reelected, said he is not going to get seated in the United States Senate. He said there is a 100% chance that he will not get seated.
Possibility for Sarah Palin. Possibility.
What do you say? You mean Sarah Palin would take the seat?
Stevens could resign if he gets elected. He said he would do the right thing. He actually has. If you look at his case.
Appoint herself.
She's the governor.
She is the governor.
I don't think the governor.
What if he said, I would like to have... But listen, I do think it's, in fairness to Ted Stevens, if you talk to the lawyers involved, he's got a case on appeal that is pretty strong. And he may get beyond this. You can't tell. And he has an amazing shelf life, and I think the point is right. Well taken. He's very well respected in Alaska. So, but when you say, what are you looking for? There are a few more pieces of the puzzle still to fall into place.
And I think we're still looking at California and the marriage amendment there. Hillary mentioned earlier in Arizona and Florida that the marriage amendments are succeeding so far, as we see as the polling data. But California, it was a lot tougher and a lot closer.
The amount of money that was spent in California on for and against Proposition 8, you had tens of millions of dollars, I think some $25 million at the very least, coming in from out of state.
Governor Schwarzenegger, he opposed the marriage amendment in California. So that culturally, if California is sort of a bellwether for how the rest of the nation might be going in 20 years, you know, we'll see.
A lot of money coming in from Utah, from the Mormon Church, actually, into California in support of Proposition 8.
Well, one of the reasons why this is a unique take on the same-sex marriage issue is because the Supreme Court of the state actually said that under the state's constitution, gays and lesbians are entitled to equal protection, and that included the right to marry. So this is actually the first time, if it passed, which hopefully it won't, that somebody's rights would actually be taken away after there were thousands and thousands of marriages
already in the state. So what would happen to the marriages of all those people?
Well, the constitutional experts in the state say that those marriages would be legal. You can't retroactively take somebody's rights away. You can only do it prospectively. So some gay people in California would stay married and others wouldn't be able to be.
Depending on Barack Obama's first appointment to the Supreme Court, ultimately, that's going to have a lot to do with this subject.
And we don't have the results yet of Proposition 8. That's one of the ballot issues that we're still watching very closely.
That's right.
It's pretty close at this point.
And in Minnesota, I'm just getting word that Norm Coleman just went up 1,000 votes ahead of Al Franken with a little more than 85% in. This could be a close one. We might be looking at a recount.
And there's a third-party candidate.
Right, who's doing well at about 15% of the vote at this point.
One thing that I'm interested in is that while we're focused on the nuts and bolts of the new Senate and the new House, we've got to look at the enormous powers of the presidency. Look how George Bush, without any kind of huge majority in Congress, has used those powers and gotten what he's wanted. And Obama is someone who understands the history of the presidency, its powers, and intends to build a consensus. And that's his objective, looking back to FDR, to build a national consensus of purposeful...
But you could argue that President Bush was able to get those powers because of 9/11 and the country's response to it and desire for giving the president what at the time the country felt was necessary.
And we are now in an economic situation, much like Roosevelt faced, which is a threat to the national security that enables a president to build a consensus around what needs to be done for the country and bring together the various factions in Washington and in the country. And that's what Obama was talking about.
There's no talk of relinquishing that power. I mean, that's just not part of the conversation.
Well, what's to relinquish?
Well, I kind of want to go to the bigger point. Is the Republicans have an interesting challenge here, you know, in terms of what is the strategy going to be moving forward? Do they want to take this obstructionist approach? Do they want to take the compromise approach? I think talking to many Republican leaders, they're saying we need to do whatever we can to pull Barack Obama and his positions to the center, as opposed to pushing him so he's aligning with many of the folks on the left.
Made really of this number 60 in the Senate.
Right. That's exactly right.
Filibusters are not based on party. They're mostly based on issues. And so when you look at some of the issues that have faced filibusters in the Senate in the last year, Stem cell research only lost by 4 votes in the Senate. Well, there's already 7 new Democratic senators. When you look at the stimulus package, it only lost by 3 votes in the Senate. When you look at the energy bill, which was for alternative fuels, it only lost by 1 vote in the Senate. So there are a lot of things you can get done, and without threat of filibuster, with, you know, 6 or 7 new votes in the Senate.
It's not only the number, it's the composition of those members. That's how conservative they are on those issues. It's, you know, which of these particular issues that they ran on. I mean, that's historically what was the challenge back in the 60s and 70s, you know, in their efficacy. It is whether or not they had 5 or 6 conservative senators who made it difficult.
Right, because there are always going to be conservative Democrats who are going to go against a particular issue and moderate Republicans who are going to go for a particular issue. So
you were talking earlier about some of these ballot initiatives. We have some of them on the board. I just want to show our viewers as you kind of talk a little bit in California, Proposition 8. Right now we're looking at 53% voting yes on it, 47% saying no, but again, 32% of precincts reporting. In Florida, ban on gay marriage, amendment number 2, yes, 62%, no, 38%. With 98%, though, we still have not been able to call that officially. I believe it's 60% threshold, so we're still waiting on that. In Arizona, Proposition 102, the ban on gay marriage, that we've called yes, 56%, no, 44%, 91% of precincts. And in Arkansas, as you said, Hillary Rosen, ban on gay couples adopting children, yes, 57% to 43%.
A very big amendment, ballot measure in South Dakota banning abortion was defeated, which this was the second time that this was fought in South Dakota and the second time it's been defeated. This was a major focus for pro-choice groups around the country.
So it's interesting, David Gergen, on this night where we see Barack Obama being elected president, we see other messages being sent through ballot initiatives and a different race perhaps in the Senate and House than many observers anticipated.
Yes, and I think that's one of the questions we're going to have, Anderson, when this is all over. Coming into it, there was a sense, and James Carville's talked about this, Paul Begala's talked about this, that this would be a wave election, a realigning election, as it's called. And with 2006 and 2008 together, you would get this massive new Democratic representation, and it will be large. I think Hillary Rosen is right to point out, yes, and she just told me that when I said, you know, there are about 10 or 12 that they've picked up so far in the House. There are actually 16 so far in counting. It's going to be large, but one does not have the sense at this hour that it's going to be the massive wave that we thought. It's not a tidal wave of Democrats. It's very personal to Barack Obama and very personal to his victory. It did not bring a wave of other people in, and these other ballot initiatives and so forth didn't win.
But as James pointed out earlier, it's on top of 2006.
I agree with that.
So you have a wave and a wave.
But it underscores that this is a hard climb.
Yep.
That he doesn't have this huge tidal wave coming in with him.
No.
He's going to have to keep building. And I thought his speech tonight captured the sense we're a long way from the top. It's as if we've climbed up to one summit, and when we got there, we realized we're not at the top of the mountain. Just behind it, there's a new mountain we still got to climb.
Earlier, we talked about Alaska. A special election is required. The governor can't appoint, and so that's how that's going to be resolved if Stevens resigns, if he leaves early. So she can't appoint anyone to it. Now, one of the other things that we haven't really talked about, it really comes, I think, tomorrow or Thursday. Governor's mansions, state legislatures. In 2 years, congressional districts are going to be realigned. And so the question is going to be, will the Democrats pick up, will they expand their lead in terms of governor's mansions? That's going to be a really big deal. Of course, we all remember Tom DeLay, how they basically changed in Texas. 5 whole seats took from Democrats, went to the Republican side. You know, and this is where that Howard Dean 50-state strategy comes in. How you're able to win state legislatures, because that impacts when you begin to realign with a census just 2 years away. Not a national deal, but has a national impact in terms of who gets reelected to Congress.
And I think, you know, we're hearing this debate, is this an ideological wave? And I would argue no, and I would say that those ballot initiatives in California, Florida, and Arizona would suggest that, and then that puts Barack Obama in an interesting position in terms of his Supreme Court justice nominations and what kind of battle you might see in the Senate there, because you will just have had these election results in 2008 on that very, you know, hot issue. I think also if you look at the exit polling, 68% strongly or somewhat favor offshore drilling where it is not now allowed. So will Barack Obama go with that popular opinion or try to put together a left-right coalition? There are a number of things that are suggesting that the American public isn't as far to the left as members of his party. He will have pressure from members of his party, but in terms of where we stand
on offshore drilling, he says he supports it. It's not a long-term solution.
He hasn't said extensively wherever it's not now banned. But looking at these issue by issue, I don't see this as a big ideological wave. And Harry Reid himself said that it wasn't, and that this was a vote for hope.
All right, go ahead, David.
It certainly is a blow to conservatism.
Yes, indeed.
You have to.
Well, that would be if you argue that John McCain was the greatest spokesperson for conservative principles, and there's certainly a lot of conservative.
What about Sarah?
360. I'm sorry.
What about Sarah Palin?
Conservatives are in a very difficult position now, and that is the more hardened they become, you have more people who do not self-identify as a Republican. You have the independents. They have a problem when it comes to moderates. And so, sure, it's not a huge shift in terms of, center-right to center-left, but Republicans must be concerned with how Democrats are now operating the last two elections. So,
and the frustration was that John McCain was not a very good articulator of conservative principles when it came to the biggest issue on the table, which was the economy. And in the exit polling, among those people, 60% said Palin was a factor in their choice, and 55% of them voted for John McCain. So I think we're going to be debating the Palin effect for many, many months to come.
Well, we'll debate that right after this commercial break. How about that? A lot more ahead. Stay tuned.
Another hour, 15 minutes.
These are live pictures from Seattle, Washington, where they're celebrating the streets as well. As I've been pointing out, celebrations going on in the major cities and small towns all over the United States. They're celebrating the election of Barack Obama as the next president of the United States. We want to welcome back our viewers in the United States and around the world. Let's go right out to Candy Crowley. She's in Chicago. There was a huge crowd there just a little while ago behind you, Candy. Most of those folks have now left, about 125,000, 150,000. They came to celebrate Barack Obama's win. Now what?
Well, now the work starts. I think you saw part of that tonight in this speech that Barack Obama gave. It was a somber speech at some level. It talked about the challenges that are ahead. It talked about how things were not going to happen easily nor quickly. I thought it was a very presidential speech, and I think he spoke to not the joy of the moment, although clearly there was some of that when he walked out. But this was a very forward-looking but realistic-looking speech. And I think one of the things is that, of course, he sold as part of his package hope. I mean, a lot of people in these crowds, in any crowd you would go to, said, I don't know, he gives me hope, he makes me believe again. And he's got to somehow control those hopes, because people do believe that it's going to happen. And he said, look, it might not even happen in my first term, but I need you to help me. So I thought it was very much a presidential speech. And I thought he also spoke to some of the things that people are worried about in the war and that sort of thing in the economy. But it was mostly, I thought, just a look ahead and saying, listen, we need to take a realistic look, because as you know, there is no bigger burden than great expectations, and there are very great expectations for Barack Obama. And I think that's one of the things that really is going to be one of his biggest steps to reach, and that is that people expect so much of him. Practically speaking, he's going to need a chief of staff. He is going to begin to put together a cabinet. There's a lot of work to be done. January is not that far away when he's inaugurated. So there's a lot of work to be done, but first you got to get the people to put it together. The transition office, we know John Podesta from the Clinton administration will be helping out. Some from Barack Obama's campaign will be helping out. So he's got to put together the structure pretty quickly. This won't be the cabinet level. He's got to get a staff around him that can do so much that needs to be done, including, of course, the planning of inauguration.
Yeah, he's got about 75, 76 days until inauguration. Right. I assume most of that time, Kenny, he's going to spend right in Chicago, presumably in his own home with his wife and his kids, and there will be offices he will have in Chicago to get this process going.
Yes, but I'm told that a lot of the transition work also will take place in Washington. There are a lot of people there who are old hands at this sort of thing. So I think Barack Obama, you will see, go back and forth. The bulk of it for him, at least in the near future, is going to be here in Chicago. But again, I was told by people when we were talking about this that they believe a lot of the work and the putting together will be done back in Washington, because we really are talking about old Washington hands that Obama needs at this point to start putting together what he needs and to start sort of saying, here is what you need. It's not just a matter of the personnel. He also has to be walked through the structure of it, obviously.
All right, Candy, stand by. We're going to be replaying Barack Obama's speech shortly. I want our viewers, especially those who missed it, to be able to have a chance to listen to it and watch it again. Dana Bash is in Phoenix right now, where I thought Senator McCain delivered a very gracious, moving statement, even in the face of some boos from some of his supporters when he mentioned Barack Obama's name or Joe Biden's name. He really rose to the occasion, and he did what he is supposed to do, and he did it in a very, very generous manner, Dana.
Absolutely. Any objective observer watching John McCain tonight would say that he was a class act, and he gave quite a classy speech, specifically really noting the moment that this country obviously is noting far and wide right now, electing the first African-American president, but also noting his own service and tribute to country, which we heard so many times at every single stop on the campaign trail, but obviously this time through a very different prism. And he was also very emotional. I mean, he is somebody of the generation who doesn't really like to wear his emotions on his sleeve, but it was hard not to see the kind of emotion that he was feeling here. With regard to what's next for John McCain, I can tell you that he is going to head to his cabin near Sedona, Arizona tomorrow. Unclear how long he's going to be there. Unclear who, if anybody from his campaign staff is going to go, or whether it's just going to be family. But, you know, it's really interesting. Remember, Wolf, John McCain has been through a presidential race before. He hasn't gotten this far, but he has been through a race before and returned to the Senate and worked pretty hard to get some things done, some pretty big pieces of legislation done. If you listen to what he said here, promising to work with Barack Obama and promising to go back to Washington and work, that is very likely what he is going to do, because he does still have that day job, and that is in the United States Senate. One more thing I want to point out, which is really interesting. Probably within the past hour, as John McCain is back at his home, he's with his family, probably to bed already. Sarah Palin was here, still on the lawn with some of her friends and supporters, again, not too long ago. And at a certain point, we heard people chanting Sarah. I think that was perhaps illustrative of what she may hold in her future, or what at least some people around her might want her to hold on a national level in her future. And
there's no indication she's simply going to go back to Alaska. She's generated a lot of support among that conservative base in the Republican Party, and she's going to be a player, I'm sure, no doubt about that. All right, Dana, thanks very much. Dana's at the beautiful Arizona Biltmore Hotel, where John McCain spoke just a little while ago. Senator Obama spoke at Grant Park in Chicago, the president-elect delivering a rather moving and significant speech. If you missed it, here's your chance to see it right now.
Hello, Chicago. If there is anyone out there who still It's the answer told by lines that stretched around schools and churches in numbers this nation has never seen, by people who waited 3 hours and 4 hours, many for the first time in their lives, because they believed that this time must be different, that their voices could be that difference. It's the answer spoken by young and old, rich and poor, Democrat and Republican, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, Native American, gay, straight, disabled and not disabled, Americans who sent a message to the world that we have never been just a collection of individuals or a collection of red states and blue states. We are and always will be the United States of America. It's the answer that led those who've been told for so long by so many to be cynical and fearful and doubtful about what we can achieve, to put their hands on the arc of history and bend it once more toward the hope of a better day. It's been a long time coming, but tonight, because of what we did on this day, in this election, at this defining moment, change has come to America. Here this evening, I received an extraordinarily gracious call from Senator McCain. Senator McCain fought long and hard in this campaign, and he's fought even longer and harder for the country that he loves. He has endured sacrifices for America that most of us cannot begin to imagine. We are better off for the service rendered by this brave and selfless leader. I congratulate him. I congratulate Governor Palin for all that they've achieved, and I look forward to working with them to renew this nation's promise in the months ahead. I want to thank my partner in this journey, a man who campaigned from his heart and spoke for the men and women he grew up with on the streets of Scranton and rode with on the train home to Delaware, the Vice President-elect of the United States, Joe Biden. And I would not be standing here tonight without the unyielding support of my best friend for the last 16 years, the rock of our family, the love of my life, the nation's next First Lady, Michelle Obama. Sasha and Malia, I love you both more than you can imagine, and you have earned the new puppy that's coming with us to the White House. And while she's no longer with us, I know my grandmother's watching, along with the family that made me who I am. I miss them tonight. I know that my debt to them is beyond measure. To my sister Maya, my sister Alma, all my other brothers and sisters, thank you so much for all the support that you've given me. I am grateful to them. To my campaign manager, David Plouffe, the unsung hero of this campaign, who built the best political campaign, I think, in the history of the United States of America. To my chief strategist, David Axelrod, who's been a partner with me every step of the way. To the best campaign team ever assembled in the history of politics, you made this happen, and I am forever grateful for what you've sacrificed to get it done. But above all, I will never forget who this victory truly belongs to. It belongs to you. It belongs to you. I was never the likeliest candidate for this office. We didn't start with much money or many endorsements. Our campaign was not hatched in the halls of Washington. It began in the backyards of Des Moines, in the living rooms of Concord, and the front porches of Charleston. It was built by working men and women who dug into what little savings they had to give $5 and $10 and $20 to the cause. It grew strength from the young people who rejected the myth of their generation's apathy, who left their homes and their families for jobs that offered little pay and less sleep. It drew strength from the not-so-young people who braved the bitter cold and scorching heat to knock on doors of perfect strangers, and from the millions of Americans who volunteered and organized and proved that more than 2 centuries later, a government of the people, by the people, and for the people has not perished from the earth. This is your victory. Now, I know you didn't do this just to win an election. And I know you didn't do it for me. You did it because you understand the enormity of the task that lies ahead. For even as we celebrate tonight, we know the challenges that tomorrow will bring are the greatest of our lifetime. 2 wars, a planet in peril, the worst financial crisis in a century. Even as we stand here tonight, we know there are brave Americans waking up in the deserts of Iraq and the mountains of Afghanistan to risk their lives for us. There are mothers and fathers who will lie awake after their children fall asleep and wonder how they'll make the mortgage, or pay their doctor's bills, or save enough for their child's college education. There's new energy to harness, new jobs to be created, new schools to build, and threats to meet, alliances to repair. The road ahead will be long. Our climb will be steep. We may not get there in 1 year or even in 1 term. But America, I have never been more hopeful than I am tonight that we will get there. I promise you, we as a people will get there. There will be setbacks and false starts. There are many who won't agree with every decision or policy I make as president. And we know the government can't solve every problem. But I will always be honest with you about the challenges we face. I will listen to you, especially when we disagree. And above all, I will ask you to join in the work of remaking this nation the only way it's been done in America for 221 years. Block by block, brick by brick, calloused hand by calloused hand. What began 21 months ago in the depths of winter cannot end on this autumn night. This victory alone is not the change we seek. It is only the chance for us to make that change. And that cannot happen if we go back to the way things were. It can't happen without you, without a new spirit of service, a new spirit of sacrifice. So let us summon a new spirit of patriotism, of responsibility, where each of us resolves to pitch in and work harder and look after not only ourselves but each other. Let us remember that if this financial crisis taught us anything, it's that we cannot have a thriving Wall Street while Main Street suffers. In this country, we rise or fall as one nation, as one people. Let's resist the temptation to fall back on the same partisanship and pettiness and immaturity that has poisoned our politics for so long. Let's remember that it was a man from this state who first carried the banner of the Republican Party to the White House, a party founded on the values of self-reliance and individual liberty and national unity. Those are values that we all share. And while the Democratic Party has won a great victory tonight, we do so with a measure of humility and determination to heal the divides that have held back our progress. As Lincoln said to a nation far more divided than ours, we are not enemies, but friends. Though passion may have strained, it must not break our bonds of affection. And to those Americans whose support I have yet to earn, I may not have won your vote tonight, but I hear your voices. I need your help, and I will be your president too. And all those watching tonight from beyond our shores, from parliaments and palaces, to those who are huddled around radios in the forgotten corners of the world, our stories are singular, but our destiny is shared. And a new dawn of American leadership is at hand. To those who would tear the world down, we will defeat you. To those who seek peace and security, we support you. And to all those who have wondered if America's beacon still burns as bright, tonight we proved once more that the true strength of our nation comes not from the might of our arms or the scale of our wealth, but from the enduring power of our ideals: democracy, liberty, opportunity, and unyielding hope. That's the true genius of America, that America can change. Our union can be perfected. What we've already achieved gives us hope for what we can and must achieve tomorrow. This election had many firsts and many stories that will be told for generations, but one that's on my mind tonight is about a woman who cast her ballot in Atlanta. She is a lot like the millions of others who stood in line to make their voice heard in this election, except for one thing. Ann Nixon Cooper is 106 years old. She was born just a generation past slavery, a time when there were no cars on the road or planes in the sky, when someone like her couldn't vote for two reasons: because she was a woman and because of the color of her skin. And tonight, I think about all that she's seen throughout her century in America: the heartache and the hope, the struggle and the progress, the times we were told that we can't, and the people who pressed on with that American creed: yes, we can. At a time when women's voices were silenced and their hopes dismissed, she lived to see them stand up and speak out and reach for the ballot: yes, we can. When there was despair in the Dust Bowl and depression across the land, she saw a nation conquer fear itself with a new deal, new jobs, a new sense of common purpose: yes, we can. When the bombs fell on our harbor and tyranny threatened the world, she was there to witness a generation rise to greatness and a democracy was saved: yes, we can. She was there for the buses in Montgomery, the hoses in Birmingham, a bridge in Selma, and a preacher from Atlanta who told the people that we shall overcome: yes, we can. A man touched down on the moon. A wall came down in Berlin. A world was connected by our own science and imagination. And this year, in this election, she touched her finger to a screen and cast her vote. Because after 106 years in America, through the best of times and the darkest of hours, she knows how America can change. Yes, we can. America, we have come so far. We have seen so much, but there's so much more to do. So tonight, let us ask ourselves, if our children should live to see the next century, if my daughters should be so lucky to live as long as Ann Nixon Cooper, what change will they see? What progress will we have made? This is our chance to answer that call. This is our moment. This is our time to put our people back to work and open doors of opportunity for our kids, to restore prosperity and promote the cause of peace, to reclaim the American dream and reaffirm that fundamental truth that out of many we are one, that while we breathe, we hope. And where we are met with cynicism and doubt, and those who tell us that we can't, we will respond with that timeless creed that sums up the spirit of a people. Yes, we can. Thank you. God bless you. And may God bless the United States of America.
And that was it. That was Barack Obama, the speech that he delivered a little while ago at Grant Park in Chicago, a speech in which he sought to stress the themes that he's been putting forward throughout this campaign. But looking ahead now, he probably appreciates better than almost anyone the enormous challenge that awaits him over these next 75, 76 days, the transition to power, and then January 20th of next year when he'll be inaugurated as the 44th president of the United States. We'll take another quick break, but we're here live. We're standing by for more coverage, and we'll do that right after this. As we look ahead, let's also look back. What a remarkable political experience this has been, not only for all of us who cover politics, but for all of the United States, indeed for much of the world as well. I want to look back right now at some of the sights and sounds going back almost 2 years when Barack Obama was in Springfield, Illinois, announcing that he wants to be president of the United States.
So let us begin. Let us begin this hard work together. Let us transform this nation.
I'm not running for president to be somebody, but to do something.
President Bush has talked about our staying in Iraq for 50 years.
Maybe 100.
Fire up!
Thanks for the question, you old jerk.
Hello, dear.
I believe that Barack Obama will lead with a sense of strength and conviction.
A show of hands.
Advocating for women.
Black enough. Conservative credentials, same values.
Talk to Iran and Syria.
Three-state solution in Iraq.
Bring the troops home.
We must act.
Without preconditions.
Islamic terrorism.
Moral authority.
Mismanaged.
Energy costs and the healthcare costs.
Money from lobbyists.
Strong support.
Economic stimulus plan.
Fair tax. Stimulate the economy.
Jesus was too smart to ever run for public office.
No, Hillary so sees
Dirty tricks.
Nobody even seems to care.
Foreign policy experience.
Blank check.
Bumper sticker. This is not that time.
Bilingual nation.
Immigration for their state. I love Iowa a whole lot.
our time for change has come.
This whole thing is the biggest fairy tale I've ever seen.
I just don't want to see us fall backwards.
Tonight, we sure showed them what a comeback looks like.
I found my own voice.
Yes, we can. Thank you, New Hampshire.
It is time now for Barack Obama.
We are the Republican Party frontrunner for the nomination.
If he wants my pretty face standing by his side at one of these rallies, I'll be glad to show up.
It's 3 a.m. and your children are safe and asleep.
I remember landing under sniper fire.
Incendiary sermons at his own church threatened to undermine the premise of Barack Obama's campaign.
But the remarks that have caused this recent firestorm weren't simply controversial. They expressed a profoundly distorted view of this country.
We both know that if Senator Obama did not say what he said, he would never get elected.
Reverend Wright does not speak for me.
How are you going to help the American auto worker?
Hold on 1 second, sweetie.
Calling to apologize for using the word sweetie. That's a bad habit of mine.
I will be the Democratic nominee. Generations from now, we will be able to look back and tell our children this was the moment when the rise of the oceans began to slow and our planet began to heal.
I will be making no decisions tonight. Today, I am standing with Senator Obama to say, yes, we can. Unity is not only a beautiful place.
The walls between old allies on either side of the Atlantic cannot stand.
Not long ago, a couple of 100,000 Berliners made a lot of noise for my opponent. I'll take the roar of 50,000 Harleys any day, my friend.
This country of ours has more wealth than any nation. But that's not what makes us rich. We have the most powerful military on earth, but that's not what makes us strong.
When you get to know her, you're going to be as impressed as I am.
Senator, I am honored to be chosen as your running mate. You know, they say the difference between a hockey mom and a pit bull? Lipstick.
We're Americans, and we never give up. We never quit. We never hide from history. We make history.
The fundamentals of our economy are strong, but these are very, very difficult times. Tomorrow morning, I'll suspend my campaign and return to Washington.
I may not answer the questions the way that either the moderator or you want to hear, but I'm going to talk straight to the American people and let them know my track record.
The issue is, how different is John McCain's policy going to be than George Bush's? You know who voted for it? You might never know. That one. Senator Obama, I am not President Bush. My old buddy Joe the plumber.
I'm happy to talk to you, Joe.
People like Joe the plumber. Joe, I want to tell you, hey, Joe, you're rich.
You can't call yourself a maverick if all you've been the last 8 years is a sidekick. Joe's with us today. Joe, where are you? Where is Joe? Is Joe here with us today? Joe, I thought you were here today. All right. Well, you're all Joe the plumber. Now let's go win this election and get this country moving again.
This is where change begins.
I won't spend a moment of the future regretting what might have been. This campaign was and will remain the great honor of my life.
Where we are met with cynicism and doubt, and those who tell us that we can't, we will respond with that timeless creed that sums up the spirit of a people. Yes, we can. Thank you. God bless you. And may God bless the United States of America.
And so there you have it, some of the sights and sounds of this truly memorable political season. We're going to take another quick break. When we come back, more results are coming in on those key Senate races, House races, the referenda. Also, we're going to assess what we just saw. The best political team on television is standing by. We'll be right back. The President-elect of the United States, Barack Obama, and the Vice President-elect of the United States, Joe Biden, they're all in Chicago. They're getting ready to begin the transition to tomorrow. But take a look at these pictures, Anderson. These are live pictures coming in from San Francisco right now, where they're celebrating on the streets there. Lots of other places across the country as well.
Yeah, we've been seeing pictures from Seattle. We've been seeing pictures from Kenya, all over the country.
Outside the White House on Pennsylvania
A huge
Avenue.
crowd outside the White House. It seemed to be sort of a spontaneous crowd showed up there. I'm not sure if they expected it, but it's quite a scene there as well. We got a lot to talk about, a lot of coverage. Our coverage continues for the next half hour, then American Morning takes over. We got a lot more to talk about with our panel. Best political team on television is here. They haven't started drinking yet. They still got a few important things
32 minutes.
to talk about. It's interesting looking back at the piece we saw right before we went to commercial break, at all these moments, these remarkable moments that we've experienced over the last 20 years of this campaign, or so it seems. What stands out? What now seemed important back then and now just sort of seems like an afterthought?
Well, I'll tell you what seems important is Obama winning the Iowa caucuses. I think that changed everything immediately, because here you had one of the whitest states in the Union and running against the most famous woman in the United States and the former vice presidential candidate of the party, and Obama won. And that completely changed the race, particularly when you're talking about black voters. Remember, black voters were overwhelmingly for Hillary Clinton at that point. They switched almost in a dime.
No matter what we do, will white voters embrace him? And when the state, which was mostly white, embraced him, I mean, that really was a symbol.
That I think, was the turning point of the election.
And for John McCain, the turning point was September 24th, when he suspended his campaign. and
sort of.
rush back
I mean,
to Washington.
technically,
that wasn't even
in his
remotely
words,
a
he
suspension.
Well, we don't know what a
campaign.
suspension it was, and Obama didn't know what
PR
suspension was.
ploy.
Right, but for John McCain, that was the moment when Americans looked at his
right.
leadership in a crisis and looked at Obama's leadership
right.
in a crisis and decided, wait a minute, one of them was more steady because the polls immediately started shifting.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm
I agree.
actually not sure I agree with that, because just to finish the thought, I think the less his reaction, it was more the fact that the economy was going to hell, and this was a Republican administration, and for fairly or not, he was judged responsible.
Do you think had John McCain not supported the bailout, that would have made a big difference?
I think that was damned if you do, damned if you don't sort of thing that we were being told by, in a bipartisan way, by George Bush and also Democratic leadership that we needed to do this. We were looking into the abyss, and it could have appeared that it was irresponsible not to support this. But a moment that seems so important at the time that we don't remember was Hillary's triple flip-flop on the driver's licenses for illegals. We thought that the illegal immigration issue would be huge. It was something that had dogged John McCain during the Republican primary. And by the way, Barack Obama said he was for driver's licenses for illegals. A lot of people thought, boy, that's not going to fly. We're not talking about that today.
It's amazing how the immigration issue basically dropped off the table in terms of discussion.
Because again, I mean, no one wants to touch it. If you talk about the third rail of politics, I mean, I guess that's probably the fourth one. When you talk about some of the stuff that was just absolutely nuts, how stupid was the flag pin controversy? I mean, we think about it. You go back and look at all of these major issues that we were looking at, the economy and the war and stuff. Imagine the amount of ink and conversation that took place over stuff like a dumb lapel pin. And what was amazing is Hillary Clinton never wore one. Sarah Palin rarely wore one. John McCain never wore one, but it was a huge deal.
This is the way you get to know your candidates. This is a really long election, and people didn't know anything about Barack Obama, and it wasn't about the pin. It was. We don't know. We don't know who this guy is.
I'm with Roland. I think the thing was stupid.
But all I'm saying,
not just stupid that he didn't change his mind on it because tonight he's wearing a flag pin.
Because it was so stupid. You just ended the conversation by putting one on.
It wasn't about getting to know him. It's about what it symbolized about being an American.
I want to bring in some. Carl, for you, some of the moments, what made the difference?
He discombobulated two of the most formidable politicians of the age, Hillary Clinton and John McCain. That they utterly did not know what to do in the face of his calm and his consistent message. We got to know him through the course of the campaign, and we didn't know the Hillary Clinton and John McCain we started to see as they fell apart. And on top of that, I think the pivotal moment is the pick of Sarah Palin. That turned out to seal, in retrospect, the election. There was no way...
Because while it mobilized many conservatives among independents and among Democrats who might have voted for him...
It pushed so many people away in terms of thinking that McCain was not acting on principle, that he was moving to the right ideologically instead of going by the principles that had guided him magnificently through a political lifetime. And I think one of the things we're going to see as Barack Obama moves on his promise to diffuse the cultural warfare of the last generation, he's going to reach out to John McCain, and John McCain is going to help him do it. And that's going to be John McCain's road back.
That might be the only part of what he said that I agree with.
Where does Sarah Palin now go? What does she do?
Well, we know, regardless, she's going to be the front contender in 2012 if she wants that opportunity, win, lose, or draw.
You believe she will be?
Yeah, I think that's the opportunity. That's the advantage you have of being a vice president on the ticket. She still has some growing to do. She has some work to do in that space. But definitely there's a Palin effect. There was a rise of this kind of conservative feminist. And people had to argue whether or not, she really stood a chance. I think she was savaged by many in the media. But she will rise again as somebody who's going to be a strong contender. And influencer
what do you
in the
see
party.
the key moments being?
Well, I think the big picture for me really is that voters this time chose hope over fear. When George Bush was reelected, he was really reelected based on people being afraid of what was happening in the world and afraid of what was happening in this country. John McCain ultimately ended up with that message. Be afraid, be afraid, be afraid, and that's why you need to elect me. Barack Obama had the opposite message, and voters responded to it. But the issue that I was reminded of when I was looking at this screen, I think if we're all realistic, 2 years ago, we just assumed that there would likely be the first woman president before there would ever be the first African-American president, maybe 3 years ago. And now you had sort of a scenario where women are a majority of the vote, over 52% of the vote, and the two women who were running are not going to end up in the White House or the vice president's office. And I think in some respects the way this became a post-racial election, it also became kind of a post-gender election. And women, I think, you know, ultimately we benefit from that, but it's remarkable how it turned out.
Donna Brazile has come home. She's here. We welcome her. Donna,
I wasn't far, Anderson.
Well, you know.
just a few channels.
You're never far from our
Someone
hearts.
had to organize those rallies in front of the White House.
Is that what it was? Well, you were the one behind that?
Someone had to get, you know, the crowd out there at Times Square.
The moment it was declared Barack Obama to be the next president, what went through your mind?
I thought about all of the people who have made this day possible. I thought about the men and women who risked their lives on the Pettus Bridge. I thought about just the sheer number of people who really paved the way. But I also thought about Barack Obama, who just a few years ago came on the national scene, and he promised a new politics. And I thought about all of the kids, and I say kids because I'm one of those kids, but kids in terms of this new generation of people who said, I'll take the baton. I want to create this movement. I want to create the change. And so when I thought about, you know, the old, the new, I saw Barack Obama bringing the country together. So this is a terrific moment to just be alive and to witness history being made.
And what did you think of his speech tonight?
I thought it was perfect. It was short. It was to the point. He basically said to the country, I'm ready to extend an olive branch, not just to John McCain, but to those who disagree with me. I thought he was talking more about reconciliation, not what he accomplished, but what the country can accomplish if we come together.
Andy Crowley was talking about there being a somberness to it. I mean, almost that sort of a recognition of what lies ahead.
2 wars, an economy in turmoil. I think Senator Obama, well, President-elect Obama, I have to get used to it myself. I think he recognized that this is a very important period in our history, and rather than celebrate tonight, he basically said it's time for us to come together so that we can begin to work on some very difficult projects.
You know, it's really interesting, especially if you talk to so many of, I would call them the technocrats, the people that were the original believers in Senator Obama, that he could actually do this, and they almost willed it to happen. Unless you met with them and talked with them, they were people that didn't come from campaign backgrounds. We didn't know them in Washington, but they came from business and different types of industry and from the internet, and they built a campaign just out of grit and on the message of hope. And it's really an amazing story how all of that and the right candidate came together.
I think about Pataki, Palin, Giuliani. I go back to it, mocking the community organizer. You look at how they put this whole thing together, they got beat by a community organizer. They focus on the ground troops, how they raise money, how they got volunteers, how they put it all together. And just like a person who's working in any neighborhood who wants to go after City Hall, go after a big corporation, that's exactly how they did it, and they got beat.
Good. Donna, what do you think was, for you, a turning point in this? But before you came, we looked at it sort of a retrospective of all the moments, the great moments in this campaign. What do you think was a turning point for Barack Obama and for John McCain?
Well, clearly, I thought Barack Obama did well in those 3 presidential debates. The whole country was looking to see if he was commander-in-chief. He had the right experience. He did well. He won all 3 debates. I also believe that another turning point clearly was the night he won the Iowa caucuses. There's no question that prior to that caucus, African Americans didn't really know if he could, in fact, become president. They were still, you know, with Hillary Clinton. And after he won the caucuses, they said, yes, we can.
There were 2 points. His 2 lowest points, I think, ended up being his 2 highest points. Maybe the first low point was after he lost New Hampshire. And he did not go back and have recriminations with his staff. He didn't go and do this public mea culpa. There was no backbiting. He gave a graceful speech. It was probably the same speech he would have given if he had won. And he went on and they persevered. The second moment, which could have been the lowest moment, was the Reverend Wright scenario. And there just was no you could not ask for a more graceful response and a more heartfelt response than what he did with that, his speech and the way he handled that. That could have killed this race for him. And instead, he let it be a symbol of how he was changing the politics of this race.
Consistently underscored the promise of America. The other night I was at an event and one of the Little Rock 9 students, who's an older man now, spoke, and he talked about how his parents sacrificed and he faced a school full of armed soldiers because his parents believed in the promise of America, that America was better than this. He wanted to go to the best school like everybody else. And in many ways, Barack Obama has echoed that, the promise of America for everybody, across all racial boundaries, for everybody. There's great promise in this country. We have to come together and make it work for everybody.
That's why I kept talking about this whole issue of the flag pin being stupid, because what happens is we get so caught up in things like that that somehow defines one's patriotism, somebody's belief in the country, when it's like, no, it's the life that you lead. When you look at his life, where he started and how he ended up working through school, going to Harvard, going to these schools, his wife, you know, growing up in a 2-bedroom bungalow with a brother and parents, dad having, this disease, going to work every single day. Their deal was, we're not going to sit here and wear our patriotism or talk about being patriotic. We have lived an American life. And I think throughout this campaign, they showed America that here's a different view that you may not be aware of that is just as authentically American as your story. And I think that is what was so amazing about that. And you saw the image tonight. Look, that was the image of the first family. And imagine what that is now going to mean. Imagine what it now means to the rest of the world when that is the image of the first family of the United States of America. People are going to now have a different understanding of what it means to be African American, what it means to be a woman, what it means, the whole experience. Say, you know what, we're just like you. Simple as that.
When we come back, John King's going to be at the Magic Wall. We're looking at some very close Senate races that we're still covering. Still have some ballot initiatives, the Proposition 8 initiative in California still launching. A lot ahead. Stay tuned.
Welcome back. We're here at the CNN Election Center. I want to show you the numbers right now. 87% of the precincts in the United States, all of the United States, have now reported. And look at this. Barack Obama with 52% to 47% for John McCain. He's ahead right now by 5,600,000 votes, but still 13% of the vote remains to be counted, 52 to 47%. Well, look at the Electoral College. This is the all-important numbers that you have to see. 338 we've projected electoral votes for Barack Obama to 160 for John McCain. To give you some perspective, remember, back in 2000, George W. Bush was elected president with 271 electoral votes. He was reelected in 2004 with 286 electoral votes. Right now we have Barack Obama with 338, and there still are a few states that are still up in the air. We're watching those states very, very closely. Before I go over to John King, I want to show what's going on in these 4 Senate races that we're watching very closely. I'll begin with Georgia right now. 98% of the vote has now been counted in Georgia, and Saxby-Chambliss is ahead 50% to 46%. Look at that 50% number. It's very important because in Georgia, if you don't have a majority, you have to have a revote in early December. So that's why we're looking at this so closely, and we can't project a winner. If he doesn't get that majority, he's not going to be reelected yet. He would have to have a revote, a recount, not a recount, a revote in early December against Jim Martin, the Democratic challenger. Look at how close it is in Minnesota right now. 95% of the precincts have reported, 42 to 42. 42% for Norm Coleman, the incumbent Republican. Al Franken at 42%. Coleman is ahead by only 1,409 votes. The third-party candidate, Dean Barkley, with 15%. You do not need in Minnesota a majority to be elected. Still 5% of the vote outstanding. In Oregon, this is a very close race as well. The incumbent Republican Gordon Smith with 47%, the challenger Jeff Merkley with 47%. But right now, with 45% of the vote counted, Gordon Smith is ahead by only 471 votes. Wow, this is very, very close. And in Alaska, almost half of the precincts have been counted. The incumbent Republican, the convicted felon, Ted Stevens with 49%, to Mark Begich, the mayor of Anchorage, 46%. Stevens is ahead by 4,443 right now, even though he was recently, in recent days, convicted of 7 felony counts of concealing funds that apparently he received, at least he was convicted of gifts, in effect, for remodeling his home out in Alaska. But he's ahead by 3 points right now, 49 to 46%, but almost more than half of the vote still remains to be counted. Now let's walk over to John King and talk about this. That Alaska race is pretty amazing when you think about it, but he's the longest serving Republican in the Senate, and he's got a lot of earmarks, a lot of pork barrel spending he's brought home to Alaska over these years.
And with that narrow lead you just showed, Wolf, he just told supporters, Ted Stevens did in Alaska not long ago, that he thinks this count's going to go at least late into the week, maybe into next week, because of absentee and military ballots. So we'll continue to keep an eye on that. And it matters quite a bit, because here's where we have it right now. Democrats began the night at 51. We now have them up to 56 seats in the Senate. 60 is the magic number. That means you can break a filibuster if you have the majority. But to get to that 60, the Democrats would have to win all 4 of the races you just talked about, and they're all very close. Al Franken, Norm Coleman in Minnesota. Norm Coleman winning, but just barely at the moment. That one's very close. That could be a recount state. The Georgia race, as you just noted, it all comes down to whether Saxby Shambles can have 50+1 at the end. Alaska, as you noted, that one's going to go on a little while, and this one in Oregon, very, very close as well. And so the Democrats have to run the board to get to 60. Those are all very, very close. So it's a coin toss as to whether they will. They need a big break to get all 4 of them, but we're going to watch them, and I think the sun might come up tomorrow and maybe even the next morning before we know the answer to these Senate races. I want to quickly flip over to the House, Wolf. This is where we started the night. 236 Nancy Pelosi had for the Democrats as a majority in the House. We now project they will get it between 254 and 260 seats. So that's a bit of a pickup. 24 would be 60. That would be the minimum of what Republicans thought they were going to lose. Most Republicans, they won't be happy if the Democrats get to 260, don't get me wrong. But if they lose 24 seats, most Republicans will say it could have been worse than that. We still have a ways to go, though. 435 House races. We'll count those numbers throughout the night. By tomorrow afternoon, we'll have a much better sense. But it looks right now the Democrats will end up, our projection now is between 254 and 260. We'll see if that goes a little higher. And there have been some relatively well-known names, members of the House, who have been defeated, including Chris Shays, the moderate Republican from Connecticut. He's been fighting for a long time. Right now, there are no Republicans left in the House of Representatives from New England. I believe that's right. I don't know if you've checked. That is right. And the moderate Republicans in New England used to be the dominant. That used to be the Republican Party in New England, whether it was Senator John Chafee, then his son, Senator Lincoln Chafee, whether it was Chris Shays or Nancy Johnson in the state of Connecticut, John Rowland, who was a congressman who went on to become the governor of Connecticut, up in Vermont and Maine. If you went back 15 years and looked at the map of Congress in New England, you would find quite a number of moderate Republicans, a dying breed for the last decade. Chris Shays just hung on last time, and obviously not this time.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the support that Barack Obama received as opposed to what his Democratic colleagues in the Senate and House are receiving.
Some key points to make. Some of this will take a minute or so, but I want to make this point. And let's go first to that point you made about the Senate. One of the questions is, does Barack Obama have coattails? An impressive win tonight for Barack Obama, without a doubt. He is going to win 52% of the vote, maybe a little more. 88% is counted. But I want to show you a few things that I think are quite instructive. In North Carolina, it looks like Barack Obama, we haven't called this yet, it looks like he might win North Carolina, which would be a huge win, Wolf, but it's a very narrow margin. That's about 11,000 votes right there. Okay, keep an eye on this now. 50% the Democratic presidential candidate gets. Let's switch over to the Senate race. Excuse me for walking across. The Democratic Senate candidate is getting 54%. That's just one state. So Kay Hagan does not necessarily owe her job to Barack Obama. Let's go out here to the state of Colorado. The Democratic Senate candidate at 55%. Excuse me again for reaching across. Need to touch this. the presidential candidate at 53%. Almost parity, but again, the Democratic Senate candidate running stronger than the presidential candidate. Much the same down here in New Mexico. Barack Obama gets 57%. That's a huge number in New Mexico. But again, let's switch to the Senate race. The Democratic candidate getting 61%. So across the country, Wolf, Democratic Senate candidates running stronger than Barack Obama in some of those battleground states. I want to make one other point as we go. This is a full county map. This is the presidential race by county across the country. I'm going to walk across and draw this line as I want to show and go back in time. Now we'll take this off. Look at the South. Now look at the North. We're going to go back to George W. Bush 4 years ago. John Kerry did better across the South. Not about the even out here, Barack Obama doing a little better, but across the South, John Kerry did better than Barack Obama did, as did Al Gore, and of course, as did Bill Clinton. So as we celebrate the election of the first African-American president tonight, we should also say, if you look at these results in the South, there is still previous Democrats ran stronger than him. Many will draw a racial comparison to that. The most significant thing Barack Obama did is he ran up the numbers in the suburbs, the big Latino swing vote, but this will be studied for quite some time. This is Clinton, this is Gore, this is Kerry, and this is Obama across the South. And Obama not doing well at all in the South. And we'll maybe on later, if we have some time, you could go through some of these very close states where money definitely played a role in this race. Tonight, if nothing else, is the death of public financing of presidential elections.
He did get the biggest prize in the South, with the exception of Texas, and that would be Florida, although some would suggest maybe Florida is not necessarily typical of the South.
He does get the state of Florida. Let's see if we can bring that up. I'll get rid of this line for you, Wolf. He does get the state of Florida. Again, that's one of the states I was going to mention. $35 million. $35 million he spent there compared to $8 million for John McCain.
All right, we're going to leave it right there. You know, Anderson, American Morning is going to be starting. John Roberts and Kieran Chetry, they're getting ready to continue our live coverage.
John King is going to be chained to the magic wall.
He's not going
leaving anywhere. Yeah.
We're leaving, but we'll be back.
Yes, we'll be back tomorrow night.
It's been an exciting, historic night. A pleasure working with you as usual.
It's been great. It's been a remarkable night. Our coverage continues live on CNN. Stay tuned.